When Abel was 7, he received the zero magic power diagnosis. For a mage, that's equivalent to a death sentence. Magic power is inherited. His deceased mother and father were mages. Even his younger sister, Frozel, who is the same age as already manifested in magic power, he naturally believed that he would become a mage too. More than anything, he loved magic so much, which is why he couldn't stand it. He tries to ask the man if there's a possibility that his magic power hasn't manifested yet. His father agrees with him because he has talent and has read so many difficult grimoires. He was in deep sadness. One can't mistake something that isn't there. But the real worst part came after that. Outside, people were screaming in terror when a heretic suddenly appeared. Others were being swallowed, so others had to run away to save their life. Abel quickly protects his sister. However, Heretics is a human who turned against the god, who created the world and a devotee of a false god. They appear out of nowhere. Frozel was frightened, so he held her hand and ran together. His sister can use magic, and he was the one who was burdened. He suddenly stopped as his eyes widened when he noticed someone in front of them. The man was not just a heretic, he was a false god. The false god launches an attack towards him, but Frozel uses her earth wall to block it. He knew it was impossible for her to eliminate the false god, so he tried to stop her. But his sister was too stubborn and didn't listen. All she wants is to protect him. Blood splattered after that. Memories flash back to when they were still young. Their parents were fond of him being an amazing child, since he can create such a complex magic circle. So if his father promised that he would buy him more grimoire to read, appraise him for being a genius and a reincarnation of Sage Paracelsus, they are sure that he will become an amazing mage someday. But in reality, he couldn't do anything while they were being struck by the false god. He crawled close to his sister, begging her to open her eyes. He noticed that she was still breathing. To his surprise, a light suddenly emerged from her body. Then, the mark of the false god, so, a curse of short life, suddenly appeared and marked his sister. A false god curse can't be broken, though there's only one possible way. There was a legendary elixir said to have been created and used only by the greatest arch-image, the Sage Paracelsus. He promised himself he would master magic and create the Philosopher's Stone with his own hand. He didn't care if he had zero magic because he was going to say to his sister no matter what. Tears run down his face when she calls his name. He was feeling sorry for her, but he promised her that he was going to protect her. Abel suddenly woke up when he heard his sister calling him. He called her name twice to make sure that she was still alive. He burst into tears and immediately hugged his sister. Frozel was surprised by his acting, so she used her giant fist to strike her brother. She was pissed off and threatened him that she would kill him once he did that again. Abel tries to reason out that she violates ethics codes for using magic on a non-mage. Aside from the fact that a big brother worried about his sister is completely normal. Frozel gave him a smirk because he has to worry himself. Abel has been holed up for years. He is not even going to school and doing nothing. His reason was, he had to do something. The only thing that the only one knew. It's been 9 years since the tragedy. Abel's sister grew into a fine young woman and now attends a mage academy. Back then, the mark that appeared on her body disappeared not long after, so he was the only one who knew about it. Even his sister, who was cursed herself, has no memory of it. Fortunately, it hasn't shown any sign of returning, but doesn't mean the false god's curse is broken. So if you read a lot of books trying to dig deeper about the false god's soul, he knew it. The curse of short life hides deep inside and gradually advances, and the mark only resurfaces when death is near. If he can't create the Philosopher's Stone, Frozel will die in her 30s. He was the one who could do it. That's why he dedicated his entire life to research the magic needed to reach the Philosopher's Stone. He hasn't left the house or gone to school either. Enrolling at the academy is just a waste of time for a non-magic user like him. No matter how you look at it, he was a full-blown shut-in. To top it all, he has an enormous handicap called zero mana. He didn't have enough time to make up for the time he wasted by falling asleep yesterday. Seeing he was about to drown himself in books again, Frozel yelled at him. Then she grabbed his clothes and hauled him. Just because he was shut in doesn't mean he can go for 3 whole days without food or water because he was going to die first before his sister. On the stairs, his sister yells at him not to bring the book because their father was going to get mad again at him. He didn't care because he was used to it. He became interested when his sister told him that she has exams coming at Plum Magic Academy, the toughest one. In the dining area, the food was already served. Even their dad, who had a furrowed brow, was already sitting. Their father immediately scolds him not to read books while they are eating. Frozel didn't speak while Abel continued to read while chewing his food. Their father looks like a volcano ready to explode, so Frozel encourages him to give it a rest and focus on the food. Abel didn't budge because he needed to finish 2 books and get his notes in order. The deadline for his next thesis is closing in. Though he is not a schooler, it's his self-imposed deadline. The siblings started to argue, which is why their father interrupted. He told him that he was going to graduate, so he had to figure out what he wanted with his life. Abel told his father that he had already known for a long time that he was going to be a magic researcher and was dead serious. He was surprised when his father burst into anger and threw all his research papers. It was being rejected from the publisher that he sent it to. He told Abel to face the reality because they didn't think of it as worth reading. His topic about how to use magic with 0 mana is beyond ridiculous. He reasoned that the validity theory isn't dependent on magical ability. He suddenly froze when his father asked how he was going to prove it. His father yelled at him to face reality. But Abel was determined since he was the only one who knew that Frozel was being cursed. He didn't want to quit his research into magic. The siblings were stunned when their father decided to disown Abel and ordered him to leave their house. Frost will try to stop their father. Abel realized that their father was serious when he suddenly grabbed his clothes and threw him out of the door along with his bag. He asked his father to at least give him his groom wire since it's half annotated, but his father didn't listen. He will just give him enough money to survive, but he needs to use it to find a job before it runs out. Eventually he found a place to stay, but he didn't know what to do. Getting up magic just doesn't exist in his world. For that moment, he got to do what he can with what he has. Fortunately, he memorizes everything in the grimware he owns. He underestimated his father, who made a harsh move. He checks his bag and finds that it only has packed clothes. He checks the money bag that his father throws at him, and it looks like enough to get his equipment set up. Furthermore, all matter is made up of combinations of 4 elements: the fire, wind, water, and earth. If only he can understand and master all of it, then creating a philosopher's stone should be possible. That's why he decided to start deepening his understanding of the fire element. He was going to recreate the fire magic spell, a fireball without using magic by conducting combustion experiments using real fire. But his experiment was a nightmare. He needs to think because there's got to be something. A door to truth, a breakthrough. Then he suddenly gets up when he already thinks of something. Although confused, he had no choice but to go there. Then he went to a bookshop where he found the place of paradise. The old man, who's the shopkeeper, was happy to see him. He was delighted when the old man got some fresh new grimoire. The old man handed him a few books, so he immediately took a look. He found out that there's a new lighting theory, but nobody pinned down what it really is. Some say it's a divine and soul, but it's all just baseless theory, so he needs to crack it down himself. Upon analyzing, he found that the book was a bust one, so he immediately closed it. The old man assumes that the book didn't pass Abel because it's just a rehash of existing theories dressed up as a new perspective. The old man laughs because having Abel to pick them apart really helps him. Abel had been coming to that bookstore since he was a kid. He's been close to the old man, the owner, named Mr. Cannon, for years. He always stalks books that he might like. A lot of mages shop there too. So if his knowledge gets in some respect, some people even ask for his advice. The old man told him that there was a book he wanted Abel to check out because he'd never seen anything like it before. It might be a real hidden gem for Abel. When the latter heard that it was written in an ancient script, he couldn't wait to see it. Mr. Kenyon knew that it would make him excited since he hadn't been around lately, so he showed it up on a bunch of mages, but no one could read a word of it. He too got no clue what the book was all about. On the other hand, ancient script is a language from over 1,000 years ago. It fell out of use after the great sage Paracelsus developed the current language. But all of Paracelsus's original grimoires, the origin of all grimoires known as primordial series, are written entirely in ancient script. He believes that to truly understand magic research, one would need to understand the original language. However, the book was too old. Mr. Canaan got it from his friend after clearing out a warehouse that was getting torn down. If it turns out to be part of the primordial series, it would be worth a fortune. Abel was confused by the title since he never heard of the word science before. The old man let out a sigh since it's not part of the primordial series and not a grimoire. When Abel starts to read, his eyes seem flustered, so he asks the old man if he could borrow it. Mr. Cannon let him, but he has to know if there's something good in the book. Abel's eyes widened when he started to read. Maybe it's the book that he was chasing all the time, The Door to the Truth. From the first page, there was written about the result of an experiment where one can determine that elements of fire do not exist. The sage Paracelsus, the supreme magician who appeared suddenly 1,000 years ago. Some say a god visited him and granted magic. The 7 magical tomes left behind by Paracelsus from the primordial series. The origin of all magical texts and for every magician. It stands as absolute book of truth. Of course for Abel as well. But the book of science gave confusion to him. It took a full week just to read through it, and its contents were far beyond anything he could have imagined. The primordial series regarding its foundation were directly challenged by that book. He made a decision to make an experiment, generating the oxygen, heating the mercury and transforming it into mercury oxide. Then he applied further heat. The released gas is captured using the water displacement method. He followed the step-by-step procedures in the book, but it looks like he failed. Then he noticed a droplet inside the bottle, just as described in the Principles of Science. Furthermore, he conducted as many experiments as possible. His past experience repeatedly performing combustion tests, attempting to recreate fireballs with real flames had finally paid off. He was sure that the book contained a wealth of theoretical knowledge regarding the nature of the four great elements were refuted, and instead atomic theory was proposed, and it's something he can't definitely prove with experiment alone. So, he analyzed everything between four great elements in science. He was amazed when he realized that all the real-world physical phenomena that the four great elements failed to explain now make perfect sense. At the very least, in terms of physical phenomena, the principles of science are correct. If the science book is 1,000 years old, then it means that era was the age of science, yet no one talks about it and it faded due to the development of magic. That book denies the four great elements, so it means people debated over the matter to prove everything he needed to conduct further experiments. After that, Abel went to their house. When Frosel saw him, her sister was surprised, so she immediately walked towards him. Since their father was still furious at him, it's impossible for him to get back. Abel made it clear to his sister that it's not the reason because he needed her help. His sister was frustrated about doing anything for him. He knew his sister since birth, and he was sure that she's bad at resisting pressure. If he begs, she'll listen to him. That's the lesson he learned over the years. In his room, he starts to reconstruct magic using scientific theories day and night. Since he has 0 mana, obviously he can't activate magic. However, magic construction and circle design are his areas of expertise. Especially when it comes to modifying magic circles, he considers himself unmatched. It's the result of his years of dedicated study. When a magician creates a new magic circle, the typical first step is drawing it on paper. He thought he could simply replace the four great elements with atomic theory, but it turns out it's not that simple. Magic circles always begin with the record of the god who created the world. Since magic interferes with divine law, one must first seek permission from deity. It's the fundamental rule, but what happens if the structure needs to be reworked entirely? He was confused, so he decided to try different patterns. 5 days have passed after studying everything. He included every conceivable pattern, at least one of them should work. It's time for him to test the foundational spell ignition. It's the simplest magic with minimal mana consumption. He went to Frosel, even bows on the floor to her just to come with him. The latter agreed. She looked back and forth just to check if anyone would notice them. As soon as she closed the door, she dropped her jaw when Abel suddenly showed up on her back with papers in his hand. The latter gave him the paper as a gift, a magic circle. But she has to put it to good use for her upcoming exam. Frosel furrowed her brows when she saw it. She made it clear that it's pointless having someone else construct a magic circle for her. Since mana originates from the soul, each person has a different soul structure. That's why magicians must design magic circles that align with their souls. Abel knew that since it's a basic knowledge, but that only applies to complex spells. Simple magic circles with a single purpose can be shared. In fact, no matter who makes them, they'll pretty much be the same. Frost will read the paper that he gave. It seems she didn't like what was written, so furrowed her brow and asked her brother if the magic circle was encrypted. Abel looks frozen when Frosel asks him if he hasn't become a heretic, because she can barely understand most of the magic circle. But there's one thing clear. That magic circle that he gave defies the fundamental principles of magic, the god who created the world. But it's not the real issue that magic itself directly contradicts the primordial series if someone sees the paper and thinks she's a heretic. Abel didn't give up, and asked what if he discovered contradictions in the primordial series. Frosel cut him off because it's impossible since the primordial series is a flawless theory. If it had contractions, then magic wouldn't even work. Frosel is suddenly taken aback when she realizes what his brother did. Abel let out a sigh of relief when Frosel finally gave up. She thought her brother lost his way completely. So she asks in what kind of theory that magic circle is based on, even if it's perfectly designed. If she can't understand it, then she can't activate it. Abel clarified that there was no need for that and then left. After a while, Abel was thinking deeply. In reality, there is a way to use magic even with 0 mana. Since mana originates from the soul, magicians convert their souls into mana, then consume mana to cast magic. According to Frosel, advanced magic can cast incantations. At the same time, that would be vital for life itself. Everyone has a soul, but if this energy drops below a critical threshold, it disrupts life functions. So basically, Too much depletion means death. The difference between magicians and non-magician lies in their soul's capacity. As a non-magician, Abel has significantly less soul energy than magicians. His soul operates right at the threshold, so losing even a tiny amount would be fatal. On the other hand, even if he has 0 mana, he can forcefully deplete his soul's vital energy to generate mana. The possibility and risk of using magic with 0 mana. That research paper is all about, but no one paid attention. However, years ago, he already discovered that Therion tried testing it himself, but immediately abandoned the attempt. Even the weakest spell, Ignition, consumed a fatal amount of his energy. But with his science-based magic, it's absurdly detached from reality. But his science-based magic is built upon real-world physics. Its mana consumption should be far lower than existing magic. He already came that far, so he decided to test it himself. If his theory was wrong, he might die. But still, there's no way of stopping now, so he started to convert his soul into mana. But it consumes his energy. Then he lifted his hand and saw it mana. Blood started to run to his eyes. Then he put his finger in the magic circle. But he failed because he can't ignite no matter how much he shouted for it. He burst into tears since it's too tough for him to have 0 mana. He was confused if he already ran out of mana. His approach isn't wrong. Then his eyes widen when he remembers something. He rushed to his room and immediately took a bag of stone. He again repeated the procedure while holding the stone and igniting it. After Abel analyzes everything, even if it's late at night, he rushes to a store to buy magic stones. The owner was surprised to see him. Abel quickly cuts him off and asks if he has a magic stone. Though the owner of the store got few, he still took all of them. He explains that he's doing an experiment and needs of magic stone, a faint trace of magical energy. The magic power it holds is extremely low, useless for real spellcasting. They can glow a bit so people use them for street lamps, but after he discovered the new science-based magic, he can ignite his magic even though he has 0 mana. The moment he did, he remembered what his father said, to stop because he was never going to be a mage. He's hopeless and no one is going to care about his theory. His father wanted him to give up magic and face reality. But he was wrong because it worked. He finally got magic on his hand. After 2 months, he went again to the store to buy a magic stone. This time, the owner got him a huge bag full of magic stones. On his way out, he was delighted since he was able to grab a bunch and could last for him for a while. After successfully casting Ignite, he kept pushing his experiments and developing new spells, reproducing existing magic through science magic, then evolving it from there. It's non-stop trial and error, and his understanding of science is still lacking. The more he researches, the more efficient and powerful that can become. At that moment, he never felt more alive, though there's a mountain of stuff he still needs to do. However, he is starting to run dangerously low on funds, till he needs to come up with something fast. Otherwise, he is doomed. Then his stomach growled as a sign that he was indeed starving. He asked himself when was the last time he ate. Then everything looked so dark all of a sudden. He was confused about whether that was the side effect of the magic. Meanwhile, Mr. Canyon sends a customer on his way out of his store. Then he heard commotion, so he turned around to look. He suddenly shouted for Abel when he saw that he suddenly collapsed on the ground. The old man was laughing. He couldn't believe that he collapsed because of hunger. Abel was timid and apologized to the old man. However, Mr. Canane was seriously worried about him because he might be sick or something, so he told him not to hold back and dig in as much as he wanted. He let out a sigh because Abel's father cut ties with him just like that and didn't hold back. So if he offered Abel to work on his store, no one knows how crazy smart he was better than him. If he was there, it would be a huge help for him. He also added that it would be fine leading all the spelled book orders to him. Abel was surprised when the old man let him read as much as he wanted since the store is not exactly swamped with customers. It is really a good offer. The old man is not even short-staffed, but he is doing that just for him. He was grateful to Mr. Cannon. That's why the old man was sad when it seemed like he declined the offer because of the thing that he needed to do regarding Frozel. So the old man advised him to face reality. He knew how obsessed Abel was with magic since he was a kid. He has talent and his knowledge is insane. It's hard to let go of something that he cares about that much. But still, the truth is he got 0 magic. Now it's time for him to realize that and grow up. Abel wanted to say that he actually discovered something that he can use to ignite his magic even if it is 0. But the old man didn't let him speak. His eyes widen when the old man advises him to support his sister using his knowledge since Frozel is the gifted one. The old man was stunned when he suddenly grabbed his hand because his words gave him an idea. He was going to enroll in the Plum Academy of Magic. Afterwards, when Abel showed his spear of water to the old man, surprise was written all over his face. He was literally happy for Abel. The latter was teary-eyed when he learned how proud Mr. Cannon was of him, so he immediately gave him a warm hug. After that, Mr. Cannon was still worried about him, even if he can use magic. The entrance exam for the academy is kind of impossible. He was confused, but Abel showed in his determination. Besides, Plum Academy covers a full tuition if they like him. Then, Abel remembered the science book he wanted to buy from the old man. Mr. Kanan dropped his jaw, so he explained that the book criticized the original series. If that got out, it'd probably get banned and destroyed. But for him, it's a rare and valuable piece of ancient language research. Mr. Kanan didn't let him buy the book because he can't sell something that is dangerous to a customer. That's why he wanted Abel to quietly get rid of it and not mention where it came from. Besides, he was quite broke right now, so he can't afford the prize. Abel drops his jaw when the old man asks him if he got a train fare. His tears wanted to come out when the old man made sure that he would cover everything for him just to pass the entrance exam. He didn't know what to say and just burst into tears. Later, he went into the Plum Academy. He thought that to create the Philosopher's Stone. He always figured that the need to come there eventually. But walking through those gates as an exam candidate that he didn't expect really hits different. While standing, he was surprised when a girl accidentally bumped into him. The girl apologized and continued to walk away. He was bewildered if the crowd were all test takers since the place was full. Fortunately, with that crowd, maybe he can avoid running into Frosol because that would be a pain that she saw him. Then, a man suddenly arrived and led the examiners in their way. He also added that they'll issue examined after registration and a man of measurements. It's time for him to fill up the registration. The woman was surprised when he stated his name and that he didn't attend a junior division high school. Then time for the mana measure. He has to place his hand on the artifact. When he did, the woman was shocked. So he immediately asks the woman if there are rules that say low mana is disqualified. A girl in his back looked like couldn't wait for her turn and started to make a scene. She even shouted when she peeked at the measurements that Abel has 0 mana. That's why other examiners turned their eyes on them. She even says that the academy isn't the place for people who can't use magic. Abel calmly explains that peeking at someone else's mana level is pretty rude. The girl didn't stop. So Abel stated that he didn't owe her anything, because whether he takes the exam or not, it's still his decision. Then he calmly walked away and didn't let her speak. After that, the announcer asked the examiner to gather up and handed out a match schedule. Once one got up a schedule, they must head to the arena assigned to their group. They have to check their exam number carefully because if they miss the roll call, that is forfeit. Each candidate will participate in 5 matches and needs to win at least 4 matches to pass. Matches end when the one side gives up or when the referee decides one combatant is unable to continue. Also, the results affect class placement and rankings after admission. Later on, all examiners, including him, went to the arena and started the combat. The next battle is from Private Cristo Academy Kent Romero versus Abel. Other students were bewildered when they heard that he never attended middle school. Kent couldn't believe he was matched up against some dropout. He started looking down Abel and laughed at him. Abel could see how he was being underestimated as he looked at the other students. It's true he didn't go to school, and he can't argue with that. The referee announced the start of the battle. Abel to have got a magic stone and started to create airflow manipulation. Kent notices his weird magic circle and the wind type that he uses. Then Abel struck him with his magic. Kent burst into laughter when the attack felt just like a little breeze on him. He was about to make his turn when suddenly his eyes widened. He was terrified and couldn't even speak. It's already over when you fell on the ground. The referee was speechless and confused at the same time, but he needed to announce that the victory goes to Abel. People were shocked and confused about what happened, and started to make the commotion. They too didn't see anything clearly aside from the fact that Kent suddenly dropped on the floor. They saw that it looked like a breeze, but were confused if that thing was wind-type magic. Still, Cristo Academy, an elite one, lost to someone who didn't go to school and didn't even land a single hit. They were all curious about Abel when he passed to them. After going out of the arena, he was nervous that he might overdo it. But still, everything went more or less as he planned. His magic works just fine in real combat. He didn't pull out any flashy things. All he used was airflow manipulation. But his version of airflow manipulation doesn't just stir up wind. He isolated the nitrogen in the air and used it to wrap around his opponent. That cuts off their oxygen so Kent couldn't breathe. Air contains a mix of gases like nitrogen and oxygen. Without oxygen, all living things, including humans, couldn't survive. That's something we'd have known if he hadn't encountered science. And not a single mages decides to know that. His man reserves looked totally fine and didn't even notice a drop. If he could cast through every match with nothing but airflow manipulation, that'd be a breeze. But there's no way that every match is always easy. He knew that the science consumption rate is a mere 100 million of the conventional amount. That's how someone like him with 0 mana can still use magic. He gets that maybe magic is something they rewrite the rules of physics from ground up. He understands now that it's not just about shooting fire or summoning water. That's why it's possible to manipulate imaginary concepts like the 4 elements. but he still needs an absurd amount of mana to function. After that, he was curious on how many arenas the Plum Academy has, so he decided to wander around. On the other hand, Frasul wins a 4 straight with no close calls. Her teacher was delighted because she was definitely in, so their school can hold their head high. Just one more round, looking forward to seeing her in top spot. In addition, although the teacher was not bothered, he was curious about one examinee. If that one oddball keeps advancing, Frosum might end up facing him, so she must keep her guard up. The latter widened her eyes when her teacher also added that he uses some unknown kind of magic and never attended any magic school. There's a rumor going around that he had 0 mana when they tested him. Her teacher noticed her reaction, so she quickly smiled, because she thinks of his brother, but it can't be. There's no chance. Meanwhile, Abel made it again until round 3. He caught the attention of other students as he used the same trick 3 times. Now people whispered about him as some kind of mystery. He was curious how they knew that he had 0 mana. His question was immediately answered when his 4th opponent arrived. She was from the private Christo Academy, Anya Adish, the one who made the commotion on the register. She started to insult Abel for having 0 mana with his cheap little tricks that won't work on her. Abel was surprised when Anya admitted that she watched his previous matches and accused him of using poison. He wanted to say something, but the girl cut him off. Then the match starts, so he immediately uses his same tricks before the airflow manipulation. But Anya looked prepared and quickly used her magic to block his so-called poison tricks. In that way, there's no way his poison can't touch her. Abel furrowed his brow because it's not poison yet, whether it's poison or not. The result is the same. His attack won't touch her. As a defense technique, she uses an air curtain, and it is more than enough so his magic won't touch her. Then Abel cast his ice spear, which is why Anya was happy since he can use basic magic. So she used a fireball to counter-attack. But to her surprise, the ice spear explodes right before her eyes when Abel ignites the ice spear. In magic duels, the standard counter to ice spear is fireball. Use fire, which holds the opposite elemental property, and neutralize it. It is the safest move possible. That is, if we are talking about a normal ice spear. As a result, she was being hit and thrown to the ground. She can't believe it. It's too impossible for the ice spear to explode since explosions need fire elements to trigger, and there's no fire elements in the ice spear at all. Abel remained silent. He thought that the theory was wrong from the start. There's no such thing as fire or water elements in reality because heat is just a movement molecule. The explosion happened because the ice spoiled into steam, and the water molecules surged in temperature so fast that caused a pressure shock. He also used the heat from her fireball while he was at it. Abel suggested to Anya to just surrender since he saw she was already crawling on the ground. Angry Annie had declared she was going to crush Abel completely. Abel almost pooped in his diaper. When Anya stood up and summoned a spirit phoenix, a dark magic demon spirit, he was stunned because the phoenix cloaked in immortal flame and insane high-level magic. He observes that the damage he dealt with her is already healed. From now on, even if he lands a bit, she'll recover instantly. This isn't normal since Anya was on another level. Frosel, who was watching along with the other examiners, was worried. She never sees one that huge, and Anya's mana is unbelievable. She was worried about her brother. Anya never imagined that she would need to use her demon spirit on someone like Abel. Anya formed an evil smile when she finally created a massive fireball and shot it through Abel. The latter remained focused and stared at the fireball. He draws a magic circle with his finger. He needs to define his target, calculate the distance, and track its velocity. After that, Anya was stunned when he raised his hand and made a gravity manipulation to make a counterattack. He simply put all his matter exerts on attractive force gravity. Its strength is proportional to mass. Things fall because Earth's immense gravity pulls them. According to the science book that he read, there are 2 main hypotheses, the universal gravitation and the competing vortex theory. But he has magic as an alternative. So he meticulously constructed magic circles based on both theories, which took enormous amounts of trial and error. Then ran an activation experiment, so the results clearly showed. Later on, the fireball vanished. As a result, Anya seemed like could move, lying on the ground, hopeless. Abel told her not to move, and even offered his hand, advising her just to surrender. Anya became furious upon hearing it. She started to yell and talk foolishly, Abel, not to underestimate her. But the truth is, she was struggling to stand up. The latter advises her not to shout since it will waste her energy, aside from the fact that she could do nothing in her situation. After that, he used his air current manipulation and cast his spell to finish the duel. But, to his surprise, Anya still could block his attack even in her state. She can still get Phoenix manifested, and he felt envious seeing that. Unnormal attack gets nullified by her Phoenix, making him wonder if he should just wait for them to exhaust themselves or make an attack. It's not like he has limitless energy, and there's still a next step. So he decided to use his lightning to strike again. Anya widened her eyes in shock, then knocked out on the ground. Abel stared at her, then suddenly. He vomited with blood on his hand, but he didn't mind and wiped it on his clothes. He thought that his man of stones didn't provide enough power, forcing him to draw upon his own soul energy. It's probably best not to rely on his lightning strike next, but grateful he activated it properly. Other examiners were surprised and couldn't believe the magic that he used. They assumed that Anya collapsed because of exhaustion. It's a relief for Abel since no one recognized it as a lightning, and no one in that era heard about casting it. If word got out that he could use it, it could cause a massive stir especially. He supposedly has 0 mana. He walks towards Anya and checks if she is still alive. Fortunately, she's just unconscious, so his secret is safe for now. Later on, they announce that the victory goes to him. He already secured 4 wins, so passing the exam is already guaranteed. Since his entrance exam scores directly impact his class ranking after enrollment, he was aiming for a perfect record. Abel looks worried when he learns that in his final round. His opponent is none other than his own little sister. He started to feel uneasy because Frozle looks absolutely murderous. When his sister asked him the reason why he was there, he simply said that he wanted to surprise her. But it looks like no matter what explanation he told, Frozle didn't believe it. When the latter was about to ask him one more time, a voice suddenly announced that their match had begun. So she told her brother that even if they are blood-related, don't expect her to hold back. Then she immediately creates her giant's fist to strike. But it suddenly stopped when it was about an inch away from Abel's face. Frozle furiously asked him why he was not defending himself and didn't move. The latter simply explained that he can't just rough up his little sister since he already passed 4 matches. Frozle seriously told him that if he won't fight seriously, then she will despise him. Although frustrated upon hearing it, Abel immediately uses his airflow manipulation. He got to make that match a quick one since she's still her sister. Frozle was surprised. She was trying to say something, but she couldn't. Abel smiles when he notices that she can't chant a spell if she can't draw breath. That's why he put her in that bind. But to his surprise, Frozle punched the ground to make a Sigil giant fist to counterattack. It's a seriously advanced stuff that only top-tier mages pull. He never thought that she already mastered it. He starts to make confusion on thinking what he will use to avoid it. But it's too late. He was being thrown out when the giant fist struck him. He was speechless when he saw that Frozle looked like enjoying their match. So he stood up and asked her to show some little mercy for him. But Frozle was not bothered, since she saw that he was completely unscathed. Abel laughs because in reality, his entire body feels like one giant bruise after her strike. He holds his body. He assumes that he got one cracked rib inside. It means that she was always holding back that much when they trained back home. Frozle asks him about his magic tricks. 1 second, it was a nice breeze. Then the next thing she knew was that her lungs were clenched shut. Abel explained that it's the product of his little research. If she was dying to know the details, then she needed to provide a suitable compensation. He gritted his teeth when he saw that Frozle used another chantless invocation, because getting hit by that again, it would be bad news for him. He was stunned when Frozle made a 2 giant fist, and in no time he was already in between. But he avoided it and used his gravity control. Frozle was stunned when she saw Abel use gravity magic to levitate himself. It's incredibly advanced magic that he can actually wield. So she cast her stone shard volley to strike again. Abel was prepared before it could hit him. He cast his gravity control to make a reverse. That's why Frozle was stunned when numerous stones were reversed and rushed towards her. So she immediately cast the wall of earth to block it. Abel realized that his sister was an earth magic specialist. Her giant's fist couldn't reach him that high, and he could just reverse her stone shard volley with gravity control. If he remained floating, he assumed that he was untouchable. Now it's his turn to make an attack. He cast an igniter, leaving Frozle standing frozen as she looked at the massive explosion. The student couldn't comprehend how an earth wall could explode in an instant. That huge explosion requires a massive amount of fire element. However, after studying, Abel realized that explosions aren't really about fire itself. It's all about super rapid temperature. Heat is basically just matter in motion, and molecules vibrating. If one can take the molecules and something vibrate intensely enough, one can generate massive heat. And that's how Abel can make an explosion that traditional magic says can't exist. Anyway, he already shut down her giant's fist as well as her stone shard volley. He was now curious about what other tricks his sister had. While staring at the explosion, he notices that he can't see any movement. He starts to get worried about his sister while keeping calling her name. Later on, he was shocked when Frozle cast her Tower of Earth so that she too can levitate. He never saw it coming as his eyes widen when she chants hardening magic to shut his mouth. He feels uneasy because he needs to counterattack. On the other hand, Frozle smiles at him because it's a standard and a real magic fight. but she knew that a complete newbie like him wouldn't know the basics. Then, she cast a weight increase for her to be able to kick him hard. As a result, Abel fell on the ground. Frosel smiled because she knew a thing or two about manipulating gravity. Abel was having a dream regarding his duel with his sister. Then he woke up in an unfamiliar room. He assumes that the magic duel was just a dream, but it's not. He was irate when Frosel threw a pillow to him since he had been severely injured where his 2 or 3 ribs were broken. To his astonishment, he suddenly got up off the bed and realized that he didn't feel any pain and was completely healed. Frosel explained that it was because of the Azov sword, a relic of Sage Paracelsus. Its blessing is exceptionally powerful. At Plam Magic Academy, injuries heal quickly and fatal wounds are rare. Thanks to that, students can engage in magic battles with relative safety. And the existence of the sword is the reason why he chose that academy, and never expected to experience it firsthand soon. His jaw dropped when Frosel let out a sigh, and congratulated him for passing the exam. They made a fist bump and smiled at each other because of it. But her smile suddenly vanished, and she started to ask how he made it when he had 0 mana. You started to tremble and didn't know what to say. He thought of telling her the truth that he discovered a theory that contradicts the primordial series. But if he did so, he'll definitely be treated as a heretic, especially since his sister carries the false god's curse. He can't irresponsibly inform her and put her in danger, so he needs a solid excuse. No matter what, he must hide it. So he lied and told her that the measurements were wrong and actually got 0 mana. But Frosel didn't buy it. He was frightened when she started to be irritated because his excuses are not going to convince her. He spent 14 years researching magic, but never managed to use it, and suddenly he can. So she suspects him as a heretic. She reasoned that even those without mana can use magic-like techniques through the false god's power. Abel suddenly grabbed her shoulder and exclaimed that her brother is a genius. He succeeded in constructing magic that requires minimal mana activation. Specifically, it can be supplemented with magic stones. Frosel widened her eyes upon hearing it since it was too impossible. But then, she furrowed her brows when Abel didn't explain everything. Even if she is his sister, he can't share the details. He was hoping that Frosel would accept his explanation, since every magician always keeps their magical discoveries hidden. At last, Frosel gave up interrogating him. But she warned him that he shouldn't fight like he did before. Because he relies on magic that strays too far from normal, he will be suspected as a heretic, and the Inquisition is not forgiving, so he should use more conventional magic. Abel fell on deep thoughts because she was right. He should have been more careful because his goal is winning magic battles. It's for his sister. Frosel turned around and was about to walk away when he thanked her. When he was about to cry, she suddenly gave him her giant fist to stop him from becoming emotional. The entrance ceremony is in 2 weeks, so Frosel decided to come home. Since Abel was disowned, he couldn't go back home even if he wanted to. She asks him if he wants to move in the dorms right away. Abel was delighted because he can focus on studying magic without distractions. Frosel asked permission if she could tell their father that he got into Palm Academy. In response, Abel didn't mind, but maybe their father will see him differently. Then they separate their ways. 3 days have passed, but still no one is there in the academy. The other facilities are off limits until the entrance ceremony, so he was the only one who moved in early for a reason. But it honestly helps Abel so that he can focus. Even the food is great, as he expected since he was in elite school. Still, he was having a hard time understanding the principles of science no matter how much he read it. Especially the theory of lighting, it was too complicated. He was focused on the book and was not aware that there was a girl standing trying to communicate with him. He was startled when he turned around, and completely forgot what he was thinking after seeing this beautiful girl. The girl is also a new student like him. She grabbed his hand and introduced herself. She is Maria Orabelia, after learning his name. She quickly sat beside him and asked which middle school he attended. He remembers being mocked on the entrance exam when his opponent learned that he didn't attend school. But hiding it won't help, so he tells the truth. Upon hearing it, Ria was surprised and assumed he was talented. But Abel opposes her since he considers himself a gifted one. The girl was sad when Abel didn't hear about the magic school that she attended. Abel panics when the girl notices the science book. There's no way he can tell the truth, so he told her that it's just a practical guide. The girl smiled and assumed that he must love reading books, so she boasted that she too loves it. But she was astounded when Abel told her that he was not a fan of common books like novels. He thought that it's been a long time since he talked that much to anyone besides family or his shop manager. Since Moreo was speechless and looked like nothing to say, Abel frankly asks if she has anything else to ask because he wants to keep reading his book. Moreo was shocked. After apologizing for bothering him, she turned around and walked away. Later on, the girl sat in the hallway with teary eyes. She came early to the Plum Academy because she wanted to be friendable. Even though it was their first meeting, her conversation with him failed. She calms herself since there's still plenty of chances. Besides, they go to the same school. Her eye color suddenly changed and looks like someone possessed her. Telling that she's right, the magic that Abel showed on the entrance exam was completely strange. Whether he's a heretic or not, they need to find out. Nevertheless, Abel was busy, of course, reading his book, but his focus was disturbed when someone knocked on his door and gave him a letter. To his confusion, the letter came from Frozel. His jaw dropped when he immediately read it and was told that Frozel already told their father that he got into Plum Academy and wanted him to come home. He starts to assume that their father would burst into tears for bringing honor to their family. He also thought that their father would ask for his forgiveness for disowning him. He burst into tears if their father realized his mistake. But his excitement vanished when he read the second part of the letter, that Frosal warned him to be careful because their father was actually really angry. Abel went to Mr. Cannon's shop to share the good news. The old man couldn't believe that he made it, although he didn't think that he'd get into that prestigious magic academy. But now he can finally dive into magic research all he wants. Abel was teary-eyed upon hearing it, but he suddenly spilled his tea when the old man suddenly reminded him of his father. Frosal's letter reminds Abel how pissed their father was. Later on, he went to their house with a second thought. He got into the Plum Academy on his own, so his father should be proud of him instead of being mad. He was confused whether to enter the house or not. At the end, he decided to go and talk to his sister first and gather some information. But to his shock, as soon as he opened the door, his father was already there, standing with a serious look. He immediately grabbed his clothes and hauled him to the study room, where years have passed since he stepped in. He stared at his father and realized that he definitely looked pissed at him. Then his father asked him if he knew the reason why he was angry. Abel, of course, didn't know since he was the one who told him to apply at the academy, but he can't spill it out. So he made a wild guess that it's because he didn't get a job. His father became mournful, rage because of his answer. So he explained to Abel that he was so desperate. He failed to notice, and that is something he needs to reflect on too, but there is something he cannot ignore as his father. He slammed his hand on the table and accused Abel of being a cheater, and that is absolutely disgraceful. Although stunned, Abel interrupts his father that he was wrong, and explains that he can actually use magic. His father suddenly grabbed his clothes in anger. He reasoned that Abel couldn't use magic, and there's no way someone like him could pass the entrance exam. Abel started to get pissed off and shouted at his father that he can really use magic, so his father demanded him to prove it and chant a fireball. Abel was stunned because of all the magic he really picked the fireball. He wanted to explain that he has his own version of it, but in the end he apologized because he can't. In that case, his father became more furious and yelled that if he can't make a fireball, there's no way he got into the elite academy. To shut his father's mouth, Abel suddenly uses his gravity manipulation to levitate him. His father widened his eyes in astonishment. Abel couldn't cast a fireball, but with his gravity manipulation, it might work. His father, who looks dizzy, refuses to believe and does not fall for his trick. Abel moved him up and down until he was really dizzy. Later on, he lowered his father to the ground and asked him to admit that he can really use magic. Abel was bewildered when he saw a wig on the floor. His eyes widened in terror when he looked at his father and realized that the weight was from him, that he was actually a half-bald man. He didn't know what to say, so he handed him the wig. His father immediately wore the wig and told him not to worry about it. His father asked how he could suddenly use magic when he had 0 mana. Abel was trembling and didn't know how much he could tell them. If he tells him the truth, he might think he's some kind of heretic. But before he could think how to explain, his eyes widened when his father suddenly burst into tears asking for forgiveness. His father explains that since he was a kid, Abel was obsessed with magic. He devoured even the most complex groom wires like they were nothing. He was sure that Abel was going to become a phenomenal mage. Watching him grow each day was the highlight of his life, but his world collapsed when he learned that Abel has 0 mana without a single drop of magic. For the past years, he cursed fate so many times, but Abel overcame it. He fought back against that cruel fate and shattered it. He thought it was impossible for Abel, that he had to make him give up for his own sake, but he was wrong. In addition, Abel was stunned when his father finally admitted his mistake and asked for his forgiveness. His father finally smiles when he forgives him. He can't remember the last time he saw his father smiling like that. But then the interrogation about how he exactly used magic didn't end. He was having a second thought if he told his father everything, if he was willing to cooperate. He was hoping that he would trust him and not condemn him as some heretic, but he hissed on telling him that the primordial series was wrong, because he didn't know what would happen if he didn't believe him. So he decided to say that his mana finally manifested. He prefers to keep the rest, although he can't prove that he isn't heretic. Pushing his father any further would be too risky. Besides, he was already in the academy and can focus on creating the Philosopher's Stone. His father knew he had 0 mana, so Abel explained that it turned out it wasn't totally 0. He developed a magical theory that works even with minimal mana. He was confused whether his father would buy his explanation, but when his father burst into tears, it looked like he was not disowned anymore. Later, he left the study room and sighed because he felt guilty when he realized that his father had easily bought his alibi. He was about to leave and Frozel suddenly emerged. He had teary eyes because he felt that his little sister was worried about him, but his tears vanished when his sister shouted at him. However, Frozel prankly asks him not to talk to her at school. They have to treat each other like two unrelated people with the same last name since Gilbert's is common. She also added that if anyone asks, he asked Abel to deny it. The latter was angry and demanded an explanation. He furrowed his brow when Frost will explain that he was definitely going to cause trouble. So if people find out that they are siblings, she will be dragged into it too. No matter what explanation Abel did, Frozel didn't listen. Before she leaves, Froel shall remind him to watch himself with magic and don't do anything reckless. Abel wanted to talk to her more, but his sister didn't listen and continued to run away. After that, all the students who passed the exam finally gathered in the Plum Academy. A man named Alec Orsif, the headmaster of the academy, greeted everyone. He announced that they made it through the brutal entrance exam of the academy, so he expected them to push themselves even harder. They have to sharpen their skills and compete with one another to become top-tier mages. Then he congratulated and welcomed all the students who passed the exam, including Abel. Abel was bored. He hadn't been to school for a long time, so sitting properly in a chair and listen to endless boring speech was a torture. Then on the stage, he heard the student council president arrive and introduced herself as Judith Baltzar. After the long speech, his torture ended, so he immediately looked for the bulletin to see what class he got into. He found his name on the class and his sister was in Class A. He was told to pretend to be strangers, so it's a good thing that they're in different classes. He was about to leave and didn't notice that Anya was looking for him. The latter followed and called him, but Abel looked like spacing out. Unfortunately, while following, the girl slipped and landed on Abel's top. Anya's eyes widened because of their position, so she immediately jumped out of him in shame. She swiftly stood up and angrily blamed Abel because she ends up in Class C. Abel was confused about where she met Anya and acted like she had some grudge towards him, so Anya angrily tells him that the classes are based on test scores. The difference between Class A and C is like night and day in terms of evaluation. Abel seems nonchalant and thinks that he remembers those words during the entrance exam, that the result will also be used to determine class placement. He questioned the result because he only lost one round with his sister, but maybe he ended in class because he has 0 magic. He was in deep thoughts about his goal and why he entered the academy that he didn't pay attention to Anya. That's why the girl was furious for ignoring her. She kept on talking and yelling until Abel remembered, the one who beat her in the entrance exam. So Abel talks back and insults her that no matter how impressive her demon summoning was, it won't change the fact that she lost the duel. As a result, Anya yelled at him and demanded a rematch, because as she shows her true abilities, there's no way someone like him could beat her. Abel thought Anya didn't know when to quit. He started to feel shame. Because of her loud voice, other students who were passing by stopped because of their arguments, which is why he suddenly ran away since talking to her is just a waste of time. After that, he ended up in his classroom, hoping Anya won't go as far as chasing him into another classroom and don't run into each other again because he can't take it as she gets clingy. He takes a seat, yet to his surprise, Marie suddenly greets him. The girl was bewildered when he didn't remember her. When the girl told him that they met at the cafeteria and chatted a little, he assumed that maybe it did happen because he still can't remember her. Though when it comes to anything related to magic, he doesn't forget. Anyway, he apologized for not remembering her and was glad that he has someone he knows in the same class. The girl was happy and took a seat next to him. Later on, their teacher Arise introduces herself as Celine Vanna. She was looking forward to working with the whole class and she started to discuss their schedule. Abel didn't notice that the class had already ended. That's why Maria told him that everyone in the class was already leaving. He looks back and forth to check. He ended up getting lost in the principles of science because their teacher explained about the academy. So if he stood up to leave and apologized to Maria, because if she hadn't called him, he probably would have been left behind all by himself. The latter advised him to tone down a little reading and assume that he was a bookworm. To other students who can hear and read his surprise, he was asking again who she was. The girl became mad and introduced herself over again. He immediately apologized since it was just a joke and explained that he's not used to making friends with people of his age. He thought that making a witty joke might help him get closer to his classmates, but it looks like Maria didn't believe it. On their way, he asks Mireille where they are heading. Abel was stunned when she told him that their teacher will show them the sacred relic, the Azoth sword. And they reach the place. The teacher stated that it's not usually open to the public, so they have to make sure to take a good look at the sword, since it's the first and last that they can see it. She also added that the academy received a great blessing because of the sword, where their healing abilities are greatly enhanced, and fatal injuries become less likely. In other words, as long as they are inside the academy, it's hard for them to die, so she urges them to feel free to kill each other without worry. Other students along with Abel were stunned upon hearing her. The latter thought it disturbingly violent, though it's true about the Azov sword, but he never expected to see it soon. It's exactly the reason for coming to the academy. He only clued to create the Philosopher's Stone. Its blessing originally came from the power of that stone. So, in other words, it's strong evidence that the Philosopher's Stone truly exists. If he could study the sword, it would bring him much closer to the Philosopher's Stone, but he doesn't know what to do. Because even if he asked to directly investigate it, there's no way a mere student would ever get permission. He was about to touch the sword when someone shouted not to do so, because if he makes any suspicious moves, a trap-type magic circle will activate. Maria was overwhelmed by the sight of the sword. Abel agrees with her, but the real question is how to get his hands on it. He could sense 3 layers of traps. There are probably several more hidden ones that are hard to detect. There seem to be all sorts of things set up in the room. He thinks of getting it someday, otherwise enrolling in that school is useless. Then Moray had turned at him and made sure that he was just joking. He turned around and smiled and agreed with her. Later on, their orientation ended and went back to their classroom. Celine was about to leave when she reminded the whole class that starting tomorrow, classes will begin earnestly. Each team representative should report the results of their discussion. Abel clenched his fist because before he knew it, class already ended. He doesn't remember a single thing their teacher said. Seems like the magic lesson will officially start by tomorrow. He was surprised when Morel approached him and asked about his plan regarding the 4 teams that their teacher mentioned. The latter said that he was not listening again, so he made a wild guess that they are doing some match. It made sense because he looked around the room and noticed that everyone was now talking in groups. He was confused because they haven't even had a single class yet. They are already throwing them into team battles. He remembers Celine's words that they are free to kill each since they had the Azoth sword. He assumes that they're dead set on making them fight no matter what. Honestly, he was expecting more from academics because he wanted to quietly pursue his research. He looked around the room and was confused on how everyone's socially skilled when they are not yet properly introduced themselves. But he was relieved that he was not in the same team as Frosel. Then he heard a commotion. Their classmate was gathering in their bulletin where the list of everyone's mana levels are posted. Then Maria asks if he could team up with her, although her mana is not that much. He smiles and politely turns her down. That's why Maria became sad and misunderstood his intention. He was about to explain when suddenly someone shouted his name when they found out on the bulletin that he has 0 mana. They started to comment rude things about him and didn't want to team with him. Maria was bewildered because she thought she had the lowest mana. If it weren't for Abel, she could be the last. He thought having more mana is always better, especially in that situation. They don't know anything about each other. The team division would likely end up being based on mana amounts. So, he advises Maria not to worry because he'll be placed in the last remaining team. In that case, there's no point in staying in the room. He should hurry back and continue his research. But before he goes to his dorm, he needs to go to the library to check if there could be valuable magic books. He was about to leave when Maria called his name and stopped him, which is why other students find out that he was the man with 0 mana. They were chatting about him, when they suddenly stop as the student council president suddenly arrived and was looking for him. As they walked while holding hands, the students stared at them. He addressed her as president, but Judith reminded him just to call her by her name. However, the virgin genius told her to let go of his hand. Judith chuckled and pulled in closer. Earlier, Judith invited him to join her, shocking the students because they knew that outstanding new students get invited to join the student council every year on the first day of school. They wondered why Abel of all people. Meanwhile, Abel managed to escape the crowd. He has no interest in the student council and doubts that the president and others would go out of their way to chase him down. Besides, he doesn't have time for anything outside his research, the reason he enrolled in that academy. But to his surprise, Judith found him and immediately held his arm. She invites him again to their student council exchange meeting. So he turned her down since he was not an outstanding student and had no interest in the council. Judith held his hand and made a puppy eyes, claiming that she was personally interested in him. She admits that his performance in the entrance exam fascinated her and is curious on what kind of magic he uses. Of course, Abel can't reveal since using airflow manipulation is particularly unusual, so if he reminds himself to be more careful next time. So he told her that it was a secret. As a Muir D class, he couldn't afford to reveal his limited tricks. He also added that he lost the last round, so there wasn't anything particularly noteworthy. Since he already mentioned his last opponent, he was surprised when Judith asked him if he was related to Frosel. Since their last names were the same, he denied Frosel as his sister. Then he asked if his sister was really that famous. According to Judith, Frosel was the top student and well-known Egan back in middle school. She also added that Frosel is also a combat genius where she can instantly assess her opponent's weak points and respond accordingly. Abel seems envious of his sister's achievement, so he asked Judith that instead of him, it's better to invite Frosel. To his surprise, Judith told him that his vice president is handling the class and she was personally interested in him. He was terrified when assumed that his sister was coming, so he really needed to escape. That's why he immediately said that he was not interested in the student council. Judith thought for a moment and offered Abel a workshop that might interest him. The latter couldn't believe that she was going to show him her workshop, because showing someone their workshop is basically exposing everything, and it's extremely rare. And since Judith is the student council president, she must be incredibly skilled. The latter smiled when Abel finally agreed with her. Aside from going to her workshop, she even invited him for lunch as well. On their way, Judith starts to interrogate Abel regarding the other name for magic power. As a magician, they possess more of it than a non-magician. That surplus allows them to channel it into magic. Abel was confused for asking all of a sudden because he knew it's a basic knowledge that even a child would know. Judith also added if he thinks what would happen if someone tried to use even the essential part of their souls as magic power. When Abel answers that they would die, Judith opposes it because more precisely the soul rejects it, preventing the magic from activating. Abel resisted because if someone had enough willpower, they could override their instinct and willingly burn through their souls to cast magic. Judith was delighted by his answer, so she asked again if he wasn't curious if someone could push past the critical threshold and use their soulless fuel. Abel admits that he was curious, but in his thought, he already tried it. Even if he managed to gain a massive amount of magic power, if he didn't survive, there's no use. After that, they reached the student council room where Judith's workshop is inside. Then a man suddenly emerged. He was stunned when he heard that Judith was going to show him her workshop. There's nothing the man can do but to cry since Judith already promised it to Abel. So Judith led the way and opened the door. Abel was bewildered because the room is covered in dark curtains and really dim. Then Judith explains that she specialized in summoning magic. She reminds him not to be shocked by what he was going to see. His eyes widen in terror when numerous moths suddenly appear. He thought that when it comes to familiar, cats and birds are the usual choice, because intelligent creatures are better at understanding their master's intent, and they're capable of much more. Judith noticed that he didn't like them, but she found them adorable. She preferred to use a life form with a simple soul structure, something like an insect rather than an animal. Converting the soul into magic power is the magic she's currently researching. Abel widens his eyes when he realizes that she's not using one's own souls but someone else. It's an invasion, a soul conversion magic. He let out a sigh because he couldn't do that. It wouldn't work unless he could use summoning magic in the first place. Moreover, he was stunned when Judith told him that she hasn't been able to achieve the result she was hoping for, although the technique itself is complete. She also added that in theory, it should generate an immense amount of magic power, but in practice, it only produces the tiniest fraction of that. Abel was stunned when he remembered that the magic power he gained from consuming his soul was significantly less than what he calculated. He was confused. Then he noticed some research papers on the table. He was about to look at it, but Judith stopped him. She was not going to let him see it unless Abel told her about his magic. She laughs and immediately snatches the notes. Then she asked Abel to head since it was already lunchtime, and she was joining him. When they left the room, there were several students who seemed to be waiting for Judith. She immediately introduces herself as well as welcoming them. The vice president named Gal Galbo advised them to relax and enjoy themselves. Later on, students started to make a chat with each other aside from Abel, who was standing still on the side, eating the food. Socializing is his worst nightmare. He noticed that Frosel wasn't there, and the president was already chatting with other students, so no one would notice if he could sneak out. He turned around and was about to leave when someone called him. The man offered a handshake and introduced himself as Pablo Suarez. Abel was surprised when Pablo asked him to do their best as a candidate for student council officer. So, Abel made it clear that he didn't want to join the council. His jaw dropped when Pablo explains to him that the exchange meeting is supposed to be for a student council officer candidate. So, he made it clear that the president just dragged him into the place. Pablo was surprised and started to interrogate him regarding his relationship to the president and his class rank. To his shock, Abel was just in Class D. Judith walked towards them and asked if they were enjoying themselves. Abel looked around and didn't find his sister, so he asked the president where she was. The president noticed that he seemed curious about Frozel, so he reasoned that he had lost to her in the battle. However, Pablo felt excluded by their conversation, so he blocked Abel and introduced himself to the president. He even questioned why Abel was invited to that exclusive meeting where he was just a Class D student. When Judith announced that Abel was one of those candidates, Galbo freaked out. He even belittles Abel for being in the Class D. Judith explained that she personally likes Abel to join, but she can't force him. The latter was about to say something, but Galbo furiously looked at him and asked if it was true that he had 0 mana. Pablo, along with the other candidates, suddenly turned their eyes on him. So Abel reveals that it's true, but that's not exactly accurate. He also added that he always had very little magic power to begin with, and wasn't feeling well during the measurements, so it seems they couldn't measure it properly. Galbov didn't believe him, of the reason that he was practicing the test spell over and over right before measurements, and it's probably messed with the results. He thought that he needed to stick to that explanation every time someone asked him. They started to argue and belittle him when they found out that his magic power is around 20. Pavlo interrupts and suggests a duel between him and Abel. The latter was frustrated since he already told the president that he was not interested in the position. Before Abel could react, Judith clapped her hand and accepted the challenge. She immediately announced the duel between Abel and Pablo and acted as a witness. Abel explained that he already said he's not going to fight. To his surprise, Judith opposed him because once a duel had been declared, he had to accept it. Besides, it's the Academy's rule. Their teacher already explained that he failed to listen. Pablo gave him an evil smile and asked him to give everything he got. Pablo states that the stakes of that duel are that if Abel wins the duel, he'll be in Class A and Pablo will be placed in Class D. In exchange, if Pablo wins, Judith will let him join the student council. The latter agreed if he demonstrates sufficient ability, he will be accepted. Then the president asked Abel if those conditions were acceptable to him. Pablo was furious when he said that it's not appealing for him. He started to doubt whether Abel even has the qualities to be a student of the Academy. Judith explained to them that Class A isn't just the top academic class in the schools. Its values last a lifetime. It has a major impact on everyone being evaluated as mage in the future. That is why every student in school strives for training hard every day. Opportunities for promotion are rare, but now Abel has a chance to jump from Class D to Class A. Pablo tapped his shoulder and urged him to the duel since it's a direct invitation from the president herself. Abel didn't argue and go with the flow. All the candidates along with Judith and Galbo were waiting for them. Abel thought that it's a good thing Frozel didn't come. All the other students are aiming for the Class A, but he's different. More than anything else, he wants to avoid standing out anymore. So joining the student council is a complete no. He also thinks losing that duel is his only choice. If possible, he'd like the president to lose interest in him because he saw the expectation on her eyes. He decided to seal away his special magic. He will use something normal with minimal magic power, something appropriate for a class student. He learned that Pablo talked too much, so he assumed that he was strong. He planned to take a hit and pretend to be unconscious. So he lifted his hand and make the first move. He cast his ice spear and throw it at Pablo. The latter belittled him for using such basic spell. Then he cast his erased magic. Other candidates were fascinated by it, but Abel widened his eyes because it was the wrong move. Because his ice spear penetrated Pablo's body and didn't erase. His magic is based on science, and it is fundamentally different from existing magic. Even though ice spear looks the same, it's completely different. A whole other kind of magic. In other words, there is no way it can be erased. There are plenty of simpler ways to counter the ice spear, but Pablo used something complicated. Abel let out a sigh because he avoided hitting a vital spot. Pablo was shaking and looked like losing his spirit to win. He can't believe that it actually happened. That's why Abel was worried, so he urged him to stand up and show him his strength with his so-called a class. Pablo was irritatingly yelling at him to wait, but on his mind, Pablo was confused as to why he can't cancel out Abel's ice spear where his structure should be perfect. Abel was nervous while thinking of some ordinary magic that he could use. He even belittles the idea that Pablo is just making excuses and guesses that he can only use race magic. That's why he suddenly stood up and summoned his sword, then immediately striking Abel. The latter was surprised and kept on avoiding Pablo's sword. He began to feel confused on what trick he needed to use. Then his eyes widened when he realized that he didn't actually need to win. Abel was lying on the ground, so Gable declared that the match was decided. So he gave instructions to use the healing magic on both Abel and Pablo. The latter seems exhausted. While Abel was unconscious, Gable was happy to the outcome of the duel, since Pablo is among top that someone from the D class has no match. Pablo walks towards him and asks if they will now let him join the council. Gable gladly accepts him. He asked Judith, but it looks like she was not in the mood. She told Gable that he would lead the decision to him, then she turned around and walked away. She looks weak after the duel. She can generally understand things just by looking at it. That's why probably she was the only one who noticed that moment. Pablo's race didn't fail. It activated properly. Yet Abel's ice spear looked like a normal spear, but the fact that it passed right through a race means it wasn't an ice spear. During the exam, he couldn't see Abel's magic circle since it was too far away, but she was confused if it was an ancient script. She found it quite an unusual magic circle, setting aside the fact that she doesn't understand the ancient language. But the magic circle that Abel uses is unknown. It's unanalyzable. Even if it's a code, there's not even a starting point. She's seen so much larger scale and more complex magic. It matches between famous magicians, but she never felt such a sense of discomfort before. Something different. She hoped to see Abel's magic again from the entrance exam. She wants to see more of his magic. She wants to know and obtain it. Later on, Abel ended up sleeping well in the infirmary. It was a relief that he was unscathed. As he expected, he lost pretty badly, so he guesses that there's no way he'll be able to join the student council. He thought of Pablo's attack. Just like Frosal, he knew that he's weak when someone gets close. His thunder strike is still incomplete, so he has to prepare some countermeasures for close combat. But he doesn't need that, and doesn't want to become stronger in magic battles, because he needs to focus on the lost important thing on advancing his research. He went to the library and felt paradise. He looks around and learns that there are so many magical books he has never read. He just wants to sleep and wake up there. But he erased his thoughts because he mustn't lose sight of his purpose. He wanders around and notices that there are novel books other than magic books. He was now advancing his research on magnetism, but hit the dead end. He let out a sigh because not everything in the principles of science is correct, and can't even experiment it properly. When it came to gravity, one of the hypotheses turned out to be correct. But now that he was thinking about it, it was a swirling theory. So he decided to consider it from the opposite direction once. He stood on a shelf and was looking at a specific book, The Overview of Spirit Magic. It is a type of magic in which the caster influences spirits to cause various phenomena. He brings the book to his dorm and starts to read it. Unfortunately, there was nothing noteworthy written about magnetism. He lay on his bed and analyzed everything. He knew based on his experience that common knowledge isn't always correct, but its mystery only deepens. He's straight far from magnets, so he'll just treat it as ongoing research. Then he closed his eyes and slept. Morning came as soon as he arrived at his classroom. Maria immediately greeted him and shared the news that they ended up in the same team. He thought that they arranged them by magic power. He seems frustrated because it's nothing but battles here and there, a post-apocalyptic academy legend. There's nothing he could do but to get through it however he can. Mireia walks towards him and said that she'll introduce the other two later. They have to hold a strategy meeting and discuss. Even if their team has less magical powers, it all depends on the strategy. Mireia was happy, yet Abel seems nonchalant. He found out that she was too motivated, so he asked if she was aiming for the A class too. He was taken aback when Maria told him she doesn't have such ambition, but she doesn't want to be expelled. Mireia explains to him that for higher classes it's just emotion, but since they are in the last rank, they don't have a lower class to go to. Abel was bewildered if that is for real. Abel was confused when he learned that if he lose, he might be expelled. It's probably because he didn't listen to the teacher's speech the other day. In that case, he should have taken yesterday's duel more seriously so he could be in Class A and be safe for a while. Ria was furious when he also didn't keep that there's not an immediate expulsion after one loss because there are up to 3 losses allowed. However, a man named Victor Fornes suddenly arrived. Mireia introduces him to Abel as one of their teammates. The latter realized that his gaze was intense. He tried to introduce himself, but Victor clicked his tongue, ignored him and walked away. Then a girl named Sienna Arashina, one of their teammates, arrives too. Mireia also introduces Abel to her, but it looks like the girl was on the other planet and ignoring them. So Abel starts to wonder if his team are going to be okay. Their teacher arrives and starts their class. She drew something on the board and made a discussion. Abel smiled because he was having fun when it came to magic, although it doesn't really help with his. Your teacher also discussed the magic power that generated from the mage's soul. But it looks like Abel's mind was into his research, thinking if he could improve the conversion efficiency. Other students were also not paying attention and thinking about what food they should eat. On the other hand, Maria invites him for lunch. Abel was bewildered because she already mentioned that they had a meeting about the strategy. So if he asked about the other, Maria explained that Victor already says that he doesn't need the strategy meeting while Sienna was sleeping on her desk. The two tried to wake her up since it was already lunchtime, but seeing it look like didn't want to wake up. So they leave her and went to the canteen. Maria was worried if everything would be okay. She was hoping they could properly talk before the real event. Since the practical test is in a week, Abel asked her if it's going to be practical training since that school is pretty different from what he expected. He expected it to some extent. If one was a magician, he should always be responsible for preparing for the calamity. It's about the arrival of the false god, also known as the 8 calamities. There are 8 false gods in that world, including So, who suddenly appear out of nowhere, bringing their grotesque servants with them and randomly killing and ravaging everything. That false So was the one who cursed his sister with a short lifespan. The only one who can oppose those false gods are magicians, so it's the magician's responsibility to prepare for the calamity. Abel was worried about fighting him on only students. Maria didn't speak, so if he asked if something happened, the latter stated that Abel is different for thinking that way. So she explained that logic schools are like that. The stronger the magicians, they produce the higher the school's evaluation. Even in wars between humans, it's magicians fighting each other, not the disaster. Magic is the strongest weapon humans have. Maria widens her eyes when Abel opposes and explains that their magic itself and its application are separate matters. For him, he wants to focus on more fundamental research. She smiled when she found out that Abel was really a strange person. When she noticed that he was a bit flustered, she apologizes right away and changes the topic to discuss their strategy. So, Abel drops his jaw when Maria asks about what kind of magic he was good at. Of course, he didn't tell the truth. He was stunned when he found out that Maria was a demon tamer. So he asks what kind of demon she tames. He was excited when Maria invited him to her room after their class to show it, because demon tamer is rare, and getting the chance to see one up close is even rarer. Furthermore, Maria asked him about what did the president want from him. Abel didn't elaborate everything, and simply says that the president mistook him for someone from Class A. After that, they went to Maria's room. The latter immediately cast a spell to summon a demon. Abel was confused when he saw one since it doesn't look like a demon, instead looked like a cute ball. When it comes to spirits, not just demons, there are 2 ways to call them. The possession is calling the spirit into the caster's own body, while summoning is bringing it forth outside the body in a physical form. He looked closely at it and never thought to see it that close. His curiosity led him to touch it. As a result, he was being electrocuted and fell on the ground. Mireia apologizes and explains that if anyone other than her touches the demon, lightning occurs, so she immediately lifted her hands to heal him. Abel was confused because it looked like her healing magic didn't work and didn't activate properly. So if he told her that's fine, and he will heal eventually. Maria looks worried, so she rushes outside to buy a healing potion at the store. Abel let out a sigh. Maria didn't have to worry that much. Compared to an earth giant, it's nothing, just a little numbness. He gets up, checks his numb hand, and stretches it back and forth. He realized that he was alone, so he scanned the room to check if the demon was there, or if it had gone with Maria. Then he noticed paper on the desk. He was stunned when he saw that it was a research paper. He thought that Maria was too careless, leaving it just like that. Something on the paper made him curious, so if you looked around to check if anyone might have seen him. He quickly took a peek at the paper, but it was encrypted and seemed like meaningless jumble characters. A cipher replaces the original content according to some kind rule. To decode it, all you have to do is find that rule. If it's something related to magic, a magic circle must include a description of the god who created the world, so he needed to find that part where that description had been replaced. He did find the magic circle, but he was confused about its construction. Just as he analyzed the paper, he felt something was wrong. To his shock, he didn't pay attention that Mireia was already back asking what he was doing. He nervously explains that he gets a little bored and totally fine since he can stand. When Maria asked him if he didn't read what's in the paper, he couldn't speak. He's not good at lying, so he explained that he made a simple glance. But since it was written in a code, he couldn't read it even if he wanted to. Mireia accuses him of being a heretic, so she rapidly releases her spirit domain, the domain of chaos. In the blink of an eye, the surroundings became pitch black. Abel was bewildered where they were. He was confused because he was floating and everything turned upside down. It was beyond the boundary of normal magic. Nevertheless, Rhea introduces that her name was Anthropos, one of the false gods. Abel widens his eyes upon hearing her name. He thought she was not that jolly Maria that she portrayed. What's happening goes beyond being heretic. Resistance is the same as So, who cursed his sister's lifespan. Anthropos asks him about his name. When he said that his name was Abel as she knew, God told him not to play dumb since she was asking for his divine name. He was terrified of what to do. If he makes up a fake name, it won't work. Even if he pretends to be an ignorant heretic, he can't maintain the act. His opponent was a false god. Half-baked tricks are too dangerous. So he affirmed that his name is Abel and has no connection to any false god. Anthropos closed her eyes, and when she opened them, Hubble's arm was detached in an instant. He was aching but still affirmed that he was a normal human. Anthropos understands and returns his arm to normal. No preparatory movement and no signs of magic. He assumes that it's the false god's power. If he plays right, he will learn more about So he demanded an explanation on why she called him a heretic. He also explained that he saw her research materials. It was abnormal. Her magic construction was different from normal. Anthropos was speechless because normally no one would notice. So she came close to Abel and asked what he was. Abel nervously answers that he considers himself as an ordinary magician. And Anthropos didn't believe him because humans with zero magic power normally can't use magic. He was terrified, so he reasoned that it's the measurement's fault. He does have a magic power, even if it's minimal. The false god didn't buy it. She knew that he has no magic power and the magic that he's been using isn't normal. Abel knew that she could see right through him. She's not a false god. Such things are impossible. So he explains that his magic is just built in a different theoretical framework than Primordial series. He also mentions that he's not borrowing power from any false god. Anthropos was furious for spouting nonsense. She was about to say something, but Abel cut her off and told that it was because of science. Anthropos widens her eyes in surprise. Abel was bewildered because it seems like she was reading her thoughts because she knew the word. He thinks Anthropos was talking to someone. That's why his eyes widen when she starts to have a conversation on her own. Moreover, the pitch black vanish, and they were returned to the room. Rhea told him what the false god says, that if he will become subordinate, she will spare his life. Abel stood up to check if she really was Maria he was talking to. So the latter explains that she was indeed Maria, and she was just a vessel for the false god. Abel became curious because he never heard of it before, a false god possessing a specific human. He was confused if it was a demonic possession. He never noticed a false god was hiding that close. He asks Maria how she knows his magic power. He was stunned when she simply said that she saw it during the exam, that all his magic was unusual and used lightning spells. She was wary of him. That's why she was certain he was a heretic. Abel remembers how worried Frosel was about him. He never imagined he was catching a false god's attention. So by the time Maria approached him, she was already investigating him. He asks about what exactly he was supposed to do if he became her subordinate, since he had no choice because he would be killed if he didn't obey. Maria explains to him that he doesn't need to do anything immediately, just obey when she gives orders. He also warned him not to speak about her to anyone because if he talks, she will kill him, and whoever he told. Abel thought that if he talked about her to someone, no one would believe him. So if yes, why would the false god bother attending school? He was surprised when Maria simply said that the reason is to save all the students. He became serious because it meant the complete slaughter of all students. He really stepped into trouble, but it was a great opportunity for him, because he knows far too little about the false god. Their being on the level of the legends and myths. He was curious on how much she and So have in common aside from being both false gods. If he can find even the smallest clue to break his sister's curse, he will definitely do it. However, he noticed that he was still holding Maria's research paper, so he asked what kind of research it was. His jaw dropped when Maria suddenly gave it to him, but since he doesn't know how to decode it, Rhea has no intention in helping him, so he has to figure it out for himself. Afterwards, Maria was on her bed when a voice suddenly spoke. She asks the voice if it was safe to release Abel since killing him is always an option. The voice opposes it since it isn't the time for it, and Abel is truly fascinated. Maria was curious about the science that Abel mentioned earlier, so the voice explains that it's an ancient discipline, a forgotten legacy of mankind. Even if it doesn't know the details, it knows that Abel has been reading the language books non-stop. Maria smiles, thinking that even a false god didn't know everything. Her eyes widen when the voice reminds her of something that should begin, and the world that she desires draws nearer with each step. She held her arms tight as if she was afraid of what was coming. Abel stayed up all night just to decode the cipher, but still haven't got the faintest idea where to even start. It was already morning, so he decided to go to his class. On his way, he was still thinking about options on how to decode it, but to his surprise, Maria was already behind him. He thought that she was acting normal again, and smiled like nothing happened yesterday. When Mireia was about to say something, he assumed that the false god was making an appearance at their school. But he was wrong because she was talking about the team battle. She desperately tried to talk to them, but still no luck, so she started to get worried. He was speechless because it totally slipped to his mind. Maria was confused because he was not speaking, so he made a plan on how to convince someone who absolutely refuses to cooperate. He looks around the room. When he saw Victor, he walked towards him. He rapidly demanded that he pull his weight because whether he likes it or not, they are a team, so he needs to cooperate. Victor was irritated. He insists that he doesn't need the team, especially with a pathetic and zero man like him. Abel lost his patience, that's why he took his magic stone and immediately cast his ice spear. Victor was shocked when his ice spear pierced on the table. Fortunately, it was an inch away from his hot dog, but a small piece of it cut his leg. That's why he burst into anger and cursed Abel. He even threatened to kill him. Abel was not afraid. He even challenged him to settle the matter outside. Victor agreed and went outside. However, Maria was worried and begged him to stop. But Abel refuses since they need Victor, so if he won't listen, forces his next option. Besides, dueling seems to be the local custom in that academy. Maria insists that not how anything works is better to negotiate. Maria was being off guard when Abel whispered to her that yesterday she was trying to kill him, so she needs to stop acting like a Miss Innocent. There's nothing she could do but to warn him not to wreck the place too badly. They followed Victor outside. On their way, Abel told her that the stiffer was still a complete blank. Maria smiles because she never expected that someone like Abel could crack it in the first place. They reached Victor, who was enraged. He pointed his finger at Abel and made it clear that he had absolutely zero intention of fighting alongside him. He also added that he will just slow him down, so he better run around and stay out of his way. He was too confident in himself. On the other hand, while staring at Victor, Abel was confused if he was any good for the team, so he asked Maria. The latter disagrees since his power is just 35, third from the bottom, so he's a reject too. Victor burst into anger upon hearing it. To stop his mouth, Abel immediately cast his ice spear and threw it at him. Victor rapidly avoided it with his earth wall. He laughs evilly and belittles Abel's attack, so the latter made a negotiation. If Victor fails to block his next move, he needs to cooperate. No arguments as a team member. Victor laughs at him, insulting his pathetic basic little magic. Abel became serious and made multiple incantations. That's why Victor was taken back. He couldn't believe it since for him, it's a high-level magic. He quickly uses his earth wall, but it looks like he couldn't counter the attack since it's too many. As a result, he was unconscious and lost the duel. Maria and Abel walked towards him to check. The latter was curious on how many he could pump out at once, but he overdid it. Maria suggests to haul Victor to the infirmary. So Abel carried Victor on his back, but he was having a hard time since the guy was too heavy. He thinks of using his gravity manipulation, but there are other students who saw them, so he needs to stick on his conventional magic. Later on, he managed to bring Victor to the infirmary. There's only one headache left. Maria was worried if he would do the same stunt at Sienna. That's why she refused and exclaimed that if he dared anything rough at her, she would hold it against him forever. It's absolutely forbidden, so she demanded Abel to promise that he wouldn't do anything to Sienna and decided to handle it on her own. Abel thought of Maria as conscientious and surprisingly expressive, a completely different person from yesterday. She already told that she was a vessel, so his curiosity on her relationship with the false god began. He doesn't feel like she was a total puppet, but something is definitely off. He also thought about Maria mentioning salvation for the students of the academy. He was confused because she came all the way in the academy for that specific purpose where best and brightest young mages can be found in the Plum Academy. But still, Let doesn't fit anything he thought he knew about false gods. He always pictured calamity as a chaotic and destructive force of nature, but this one, it has clear intent. It's methodical and has a plan. Even so, with Anthropo's kind of power, wiping students should be trivial and effortless. So why the games? He concluded that there must be a reason. When Maria and Abel saw Sienna, the latter abruptly turned around to avoid them, but the two already saw her. So Mireia called her name and begged her to cooperate with them. She felt embarrassed when Sienna ignored them and entered a room, then slammed the door. She wasn't finished yet, so they followed her. Fortunately, Sienna listens. So Mireia starts to ask about what kind of power she specialized in and strategy. Since Sienna was cooperating, Mireia asked Abel to grab Victor since he might already be healed, although disoriented because she is actually planning to take the battle seriously. Abel follows her instructions. In his mind, if only Mireia could unleash the power that she showed on him in the actual match. Maybe they will win because he was dying to see that again. He was about to open the door when Victor had already done so. Victor was surprised as soon as he saw Abel. Abel explains that they were having a strategy meeting, and he came to fetch him. Victor started to blabber regarding the reason he lost in their battle, but, in the end, he was willing to cooperate. Abel was delighted and didn't argue with his nonsense, so they both agreed and gave a handshake. They went to Mireia, but were taken aback when they noticed that Sienna was already sleeping on Mireia's lap and completely dead to the world. Even though she tries to wake her up repeatedly, she won't budge. They have no choice but to start the meeting while Sienna is conked out. Mireia was happy to see Victor. Abel thought that he didn't know the rules for the combat, so he suggested that they should go quickly over the rules. Mireya agreed, so she explained that the team battles are organized by class, and each match is 4 teams against each other, so there are 16 participants in total. Winning a match earns each team 3 evaluation points, but coming in last costs -3 points. Abel was sweating because he learned another term he never heard of. Mireya noticed him, so he explained that he was just trying to remember what she said. The latter continued and told them that every student has evaluation points tied to their class rank. Their points go up or down based on team battle outcome. A class students start with 70, but since they are in Class D, they get only 10. If they hit 0 points, they are expelled. For the top 3 classes, hitting 0 just bumps them down to the next lower class. But on the other side, they could get 10 extra points and move up to A class. Abel finally understood, but Victor seems irritated because they are wasting their time on pointless garbage. It's Abel's fault since he didn't listen to their teacher's explanation on their first day. So Mireya continues explaining the actual rule of the match. It's purely a point-based system you score by defeating opponents. She also added that to take down one enemy, that's 1 point for a team. Final rankings are based purely on points accumulated before time runs out. Once defeated, you are eliminated. No respawns, no coming back. Each match lasts up to 8 hours and cannot leave the designated battlefield during that time. Stepping outside is considered disqualified. The battlefield changes for every match and is announced before starting a match. Basically, it's just kill or be killed. Abel thought that simply surviving doesn't count for anything. Plus, with a fixed number of players, the longer the match goes on, the fewer targets there are left, which means the early game is crucial. Mireya agrees with him because how they effectively cooperate from the start determines everything, and reconnaissance is absolutely vital. She also added that most teams might stick together in a tight group because spreading out is usually riskier than it's worth. Eliminate just one in a team, and it became 3 against 4 and got a number advantage. Press that advantage hard, and they could potentially wipe out their entire team. Abel understood, so he asked their actual plan. The latter and Victor dropped their jaws when Mireya asks them if they had magic sensory abilities or could analyze sound precisely because that would be a game changer. Because if they could pull off crap like that, Victor wouldn't be stuck in Class D. Mireya laughs upon hearing them, so her hopes for her Plan B is for Abel. The latter was having a second thought when Mireya announced that the Plan B is aerial recon using float magic, where scouting from above could give them a massive tactical advantage, because technically he can do it using his gravity manipulation. But Mireya has a direct link to the actual false god. Making himself conspicuous is the last thing he needs. He decided not to do it, but his jaw dropped when Mireya announced that he was the one who could handle it. He immediately asked Mireya why him, but the latter just simply answers that it's obvious that he can fly and goes toe-to-toe with Frosel. Abel seems in trouble because a false god is inside Mireya. His plan was to lay low, but it looks like the false god is the one who suggested it, so it might be part of her plan. On the other hand, Victor seems flustered when he heard that Abel could actually fly and have a battle with Frosel, who's a top-ranked student. Abel was nervous because letting him know would just complicate things even worse, plus the huge risk of other teams spotting him. So he made it clear to the two that he cannot use float magic. He explains that Mireya probably just saw him leap really high to dodge something. It's an easy mistake to make thinking he was flying. Mireya became serious upon hearing him. She also apologized for jumping into conclusion. So she asked Victor if he could fly. The latter was irritated because he was obviously not. Since none of them can fly, Mireya asks if they could use water to form a lens for long-range viewing. She can manage to do it, but she needs to find a spot with a clear view. She'll be useless if there are too many trees or hills. They suggest focusing on hiding and ambushing instead, but they can't win points in that way, if they absolutely have to find a way to engage on their terms with an advantage. Victor and Mireya look confused when Abel suggests getting them spotted from the start. None of them speaks, so Abel decides to iron out the final details tomorrow. Victor agreed and left, but Abel was bewildered when he saw that Sienna was still sleeping. So, he asks Mireya if she needs a hand to carry her to her dorm. But the problem is the latter didn't know her dorm, so she decided to wait for her to awake. He was about to walk away when Mireya expressed that activities such as discussing plans together and going on adventures with friends were her dream. Abel remembers when they first met. She mentioned that she was into an adventure novel called Holo's Adventure. Mireya was surprised when he still remembered it, because she honestly thought that Abel has zero interest in books. Abel explained that he would try at once to broaden his horizon, so he asked what it is that she likes most about the novel. Mireya was thinking, but to his surprise, she began to blabber about how amazing the character was and the final battle scene. In the end, Mireya made him promise that he will read it and hear his thoughts afterwards. Mireya's memory was still hunting her papa's voice and his gentle hand stroking her head, promising that everything will be all right, and promise that he will come back. She was begging him not to go and leave her alone. His father apologizes and explains that he is a mage. She burst into tears when her father didn't change his mind and left her with her aunt. One day she received a letter and a necklace. She remembers what her father told her, that the solemn duty of a mage is to prepare for the calamity, to stand against false god, and he might fight to protect those without magic. She also remembers that she once wanted to help him, and became a mage and fight too. Tears run down her face upon reading the letter. She heard rumors about sending off his father in such a reckless mission, a practically death sentence. Stitching it, she assumes that her father had been killed after being dragged into a border skirmish with the neighboring territory. Just a pointless squabble between greedy men and wasn't to protect everyone from the calamity. In their world, mages are precious assets. Any child who demonstrates magical aptitude is inevitably enrolled in one magic academy. As an orphan, she was no exception. The state covers her expenses since cultivating mages is vital national policy. When she was accepted to Astorio Magic Academy, everyone congratulated her and assumed that her father would be so proud of her. But she was confused, since being a mage is the reason why her father died. They invoke the calamity like some bogeyman, but it's never truly coming. In the end, she realized that mages are nothing but tools for slaughter, instruments of war, and she was no exception. She was scared and hated the mages. That day she just wished to God that the magic would vanish from their world entirely. A false god heard her and found her an interesting little thing. The god decided to grant it. Abel waved goodbye to Mireya and went to the library. After a while, when Mireya was alone, she heard the god asking about the entertaining little events that's coming. Her eyes widened when the god commanded her to offer every last student to her. According to the god, they are to be sacrificed since her power is not fully restored. For her complete resurrection, consuming that multitude of souls shall grant her physical form. Mireya didn't agree since the false god didn't say anything like that. She also added that if she offered her soul, that would be enough. She was furious and asked the false god not to mock her since it was claiming that she didn't remember any of it. The false god also reminds her that she was the one who called her to grant her wish. Mireya's eyes widen in confusion, because she just wishes that the magic would vanish, a world of peace, and not to kill everyone. She was shocked when the false god told her there is no difference, because if every last mage vanished, then magic itself would vanish, the world that she longed for. Mireya asked the false god to stop. Then she took the knife from the table and tried to take her own life. She suddenly felt something, and fell on the ground, gasping for air. The false god insulted her for attempting that act 17 times. But she still didn't learn the lesson. Mireya burst into tears for how foolish she was and blind for her wish since her father died. She was crawling on the ground hoping for Abel's help. Meanwhile, Abel was already in the library looking for the novel book, the one that Mireya recommended to him. Naturally, the story itself does not hold interest for him. But the fact that Mireya brought it up specifically like that confirms that she wants him to decipher the code, which means that the false god hasn't achieved complete mastery over her thoughts. He starts to read the book looking for some hidden keyword. If he can isolate this keyword, it is simply a matter of aligning it with the ciphertext and performing the character substitution. Then his eyes widen when he notices the line spoken by the protagonist during the final battle. Ash, the closest friend, the one who protects Holo halfway through the story. It must be the keyword that he was looking for. Ash's death will never be in vain. Mireya remembers how her father read her the Hollow's adventure. She burst into tears for being such a foolish daughter. She was the one who summoned the false god, therefore. She was the one who must face the consequences. She held tight to the necklace that her father gave her, determined not to allow that twisted salvation to come to pass. She thought about Abel and found him really something else. She never imagined that he would remember Hollow's adventure. She thought that the power that he possesses is utterly alien, unlike anything a normal mage could wield. Something unique that even the false god itself didn't recognize. At first, she suspected him that it might be the power of a different false god, but Abel was truly special. And because of that, she was begging him to kill her. The creator god forged their world, shaping humans in their own divine image. First the soul and the flesh, the vessel destined to house that was written in the primordial series. The legendary text said to contain all the wisdom by the supreme mage, Sage Paracelsus, 1,000 years ago. Then there are false gods beginning with Zoe, who cursed Abel's sister with a shortened life. 8 such false gods plague their world, bringing untold devastation upon humankind. They are the very essence of calamity made manifest. That night, Abel was paying so much attention to Mireya's research notes. He thought he never fathomed that she contained insights of that caliber that were utterly fascinating. Until morning in his class, he was still thinking because achieving it was far beyond his current capabilities. If only Mireia were holding every single piece that he was missing on his research. Then if he laser focuses on his efforts, he might manage it on his own power. The materials from Urea that he managed to decode were startlingly detailed records concerning the false god Anthropos, coupled with a thorough analysis of potential subjugation strategies. He looks at Mireia thinking that she has painstakingly gathered over a vast stretch of time while under that false god's watchful eye. He was curious on what more if her intricate plan unfolds exactly as intended, the fate awaiting for her. One can offer the deepest admiration, but he felt sorry for Mireia because granting her wish is a luxury he simply cannot afford. While in deep thought, his eyes widened when Victor shouted his name out. The man was irritated, so Mireia immediately apologized. Victor was furious since they were not taking their meeting seriously. The two were spacing out while Sienna was sleeping again. Instead of making arguments, Abel calms himself and refocuses. He asks them to leave the defensive position, then asks how long Victor can keep it up. The latter reply that it varies quite a bit depending on the surrounding terrain. Upon hearing it, Abel turns to Mireia and asks if the designated field is a hilly region. But it looks like Mireia was still on the other world and didn't respond. That's why Abel called her name again. The two men were confused in her answer since they were talking about the region and not the rule. In addition, a man suddenly walks up to them and insults their strategy session. Victor suddenly burst into anger when he saw the man and started to make an argument with him. Abel was bewildered for who the man was, so Mireia told him that he was their classmate and their next opponent. She also suggested trying to read the tournament brackets sometime since he was not good at remembering names and faces. Anyway, the man introduced himself as Yulin Delgard. According to Mireia, within the class, his magic power is notably high, something of a leader among them, a serious trouble, so they need to keep an eye on him. Abel never kept the names and faces. Besides, he got far more pressing matters in his mind. Then he calls Mireia, who suddenly becomes quiet, and her behavior is still concerning. The latter asks him to come into her room after the evening meal because there's something she must discuss with him. Abel went to the students' council office to meet with Judith. When he entered the room, he immediately apologized for disturbing her. The president was surprised to visit her on his own volition. She immediately walks close to Abel and assumes that he finally had a change of heart about joining their council. Abel was about to speak something, but Judith stopped him and guessed that he would not base on his expression. Her eyes widened when Abel told her that the reason he was there was asking her to show him her research materials. Abel knew that Judith's reaction was natural, since he too recognized his request as absolutely unconventional, a taboo for any mage. She might have thrown him out on the spot, but he was running out of time. Trying to solve everything alone is no longer an option, so whatever it takes, he must persuade her. So he grabs Judith, begging her. He was willing to pay whatever price she demanded. The president was shocked, but she remained focused since Abel stated about the price. She made it clear that Abel understood the required compensation of considerable value when it comes to her personal research. Abel immediately agreed. He was astonished when the president speculated that he had a specific objective in his mind because she had no idea how much he could help. Since they both agreed with their terms, Judith suggested formalizing their agreement with a blood contract. He agreed, but it looks like he was nervous and Judith noticed it, so she guides him to make a small drop and mix his blood into the ink. A blood contract, a pact of extreme binding power, consecrated using the blood of both parties as its medium. Although it was Abel's first time enacting one with a fellow human, but given the nature of what he shared, his research, he has zero objections. After the signing, Judith made it clear that his life shall become forfeit to her. Abel understood it. He was not having second thoughts because, honestly, he felt nothing but immense gratitude that she would entertain such an outrageous request. Then they placed their finger on the paper they signed. Judith stated that the chains of solemn vow, their bonds, let no soul dare to interfere. With their bloods entwined as lock and seal, then their agreement was done. A light suddenly emerged. Abel seems confused, because the price exacted by the president. The debt he is bound to repay is to enter the forthcoming interclass team competition as the chosen representative of Class D and to secure the ultimate victory. He was relieved that Judith didn't demand access to his research notes because it might be catastrophic. But no matter the condition imposed upon him, it changes nothing. The day of the battle arrived. Selene, in charge of their class, made a roll call on their team. She told the team that upon reaching their coordinates, they have to proceed to the standby area and wait until the official start time. The match commences the instant their team market illuminates. Then they command them to move out of the forest. Abel observes that everything hinges on whether or not they can survive that team competition. The team walked into the woods until they found a torch to serve as their starting point. Abel finds the field a massive one since they have been walking for 30 minutes. Victor reminded them to be careful to step out of the field since they were getting close to the edge. He also mentioned that each participant has an individual signal on their arm to track their location. The place was still inside the academy, and the Azoth sword's blessing to heal is still working in that place. But if someone stabs one's heart while that one is still unconscious and doesn't use healing magic, one will die. Abel thought that basically, if someone really wants to kill, it's possible, but normally no student would ever do such a thing. He remembered his conversation with Mireia 5 days ago. He was surprised when the latter told him that they were to offer up everyone besides their team. It's the meaning of the word salvation from the false god and wiping out humanity. The false god is planning to make it happen at the Plum Academy. According to Mireia, the false god within her is actually incomplete. To perform salvation, it must be whole, so it needs to incarnate. And for that, it needs about 10 sacrifices. Abel was bewildered because her words did not exactly say what the document said. The incomplete part matches. But the false god is currently parasitizing Mireia, slowly eating away at her from within. In the end, the false god tried to devour her soul and become whole. While it's still suppressed within Mireia, she wants him to destroy the false god along with her. He was confused if Mireia knew that, or it could be new information she wasn't told. She thought she could settle the matter on her own by sacrificing herself, and that must be the reason why she's acting off lately. Even getting involved in their team wasn't part of the plan. She might not have expected the false god to move soon. He can see on her face that she needs his help. Sacrifices. It's about using souls as energy. Looks like Abel already knew what needs to be done. That's why he went to the student council president to agree with him no matter what. Mireia widened her eyes when Abel told her that he was willing to help, because she didn't expect Abel would agree so easily. The latter was calm and knew that they had to kill the student. Upon hearing the word killing, Mireia loses her temper. Abel asks her to calm down since she's the one who brought everything up, so he asked her what to do. Mireia explains that they need to restrain the targets so that they can't resist and gather them in one place. Abel was confused when Mireia also added that knocking out all the students and carrying them alive because that's literally the team match victory condition. Her plan is not just avoiding the last place, and looks like they got another motive. Anyway, the two executed their plan and looked like they were just right on schedule when they saw the torch. Victor immediately uses his earth wall as a shield, assuming they would be found easily since it's their strategy. Since they don't have the edge in a straight-up ability fight, which is why they let themselves be found, they will build a fortress and use it as bait, and chop down nearby trees to keep the area visible. Then they will hide in the surrounding forest and keep watching. The enemy sees the fortress, assumes they were holed up inside and comes for them. Then they can hit them from behind. To avoid blind spots, each of them must watch from a corner. The moment one of them spots someone approaching, they will give a signal. While standing by, Abel sensed that Mireia, who seemed worried, was in his back, so he advised her not to wander in her area since it's not a good look. The latter was about to say something, but she stopped when they heard something. They turned around to see that the sound came from Victor's area. They look at the area and find that the fortress is gone. There's no signal and only heard one shot. No signs of fight either. Abel was worried because Victor didn't have time to signal and was taken out instantly. They peep in the area and find Dulce standing on the broken fortress, mocking their scheme. The two both widened their eyes when they learned that Dulce was not alone. They were 12 people from the 3 other teams. They were confused on what's going on. Abel guesses that all the other teams must have joined forces because if they just take out one team, none of them place last. Abel didn't see it coming. For the Class D, last place means expulsion on the spot. If all the teams were evenly matched, this wouldn't have worked, but their teams were severely lacking in mana. With the top 3 ganging up, they were an easy target. He also added that it was unfair and against the rule. Mireia opposes him since there's nothing in the rules that says they can't gang up, so technically it is allowed. Furthermore, they also heard Dulce ordered the other students to move in groups and take them down one by one because they must be hiding nearby. Abel suddenly cursed when they also heard that they need to restrain the last one of them so that they can distribute their points equally since they've even got the point distribution figured out. Abel was now worried because they were supposed to knock everyone up and gather in one place. But now they've gathered up for them. So he suggested that with the false god's power, they could wipe out that lot without breaking a sweat. Mireia opposes it since they can't let them see the false god's power. Abel looks at her, asking what's the problem if they see them when they were using them all as sacrifice. Mireia was amazed how calm Abel was, but became sad because his plan was horrific. He accuses him of siding with the false god to murder their classmates. A normal student would be freaking out trying to stop it. She was shocked when Abel replied that she read him wrong. He even challenged her if she was backing out. Mireia was speechless and looked like no other choice. Before walking out of their hiding place, she told Abel that she was seriously disappointed with him. Later on, they came out of their hiding place. Dulce started to insult them, but Mireia was not bothered and started to release her domain, the chaotic domain. Dulce and the other students were horrified when the place went dark. Dulce was about to ask, what kind of magic did she use? But he couldn't finish his word when in an instant, his head, along with the other students, were cut into half. Arms, legs, they were all cut into pieces, until they fell on the ground lifeless. Abel looks like waiting for something while staring at Mireia doing her thing. His eyes widen when Mireia starts to convert the souls of the students into mana, though didn't want to do it. Mireia released her magic circle and lifted her hand, but before it could happen, she burst into tears and stopped, claiming she didn't want to do it. She begged Abel to do his part to kill her. Abel quickly uses his ice spear and pierce it through her body. Mireia fell on the ground, lifeless, but it turned out Abel commanded her to wake up. Then Mireia wakes up and pretends didn't know what's happening. Then Abel smiled when she called him a bastard since she was not Mireia anymore instead, the false god. He was delighted because the false god finally showed herself, standing before him. The false god smiled evilly and introduced her name as Anthropos. Campbell wanted to introduce himself too, but Anthropos declined him since she doesn't care about his human name. Instead, she asked the meaning of what he has done to Mireia's body, piercing his ice spear in her body. Abel calmly replied that Mireia ordered him to follow her instructions. He clenched his fist and asked if she knew about the false god named So. When Anthropos widened her eyes upon hearing the name, he became curious and immediately asked about the curse of the false god. He begged her, ready to take whatever she got. But to his surprise, Anthropos didn't answer his question. Instead, in an instant, she cut his arms, body one after another up to his head. Anthropos was furious to Abel for trying to speak to her as an equal. She thought Abel has a bit of wit, but he's still a human. She picked up Abel's head. If only Abel submitted himself quietly, she might let him live until that day. But her eyes widened in astonishment when Abel suddenly lived again and could speak. The latter smiled because they were in the chaos area, the domain of chaos where it's built to work like that. According to Mireia's data, in that spiritual domain, physical matter cannot exist. They only exist there only as their mind, detached from their physical body. Everything that happens in that place is nothing but illusion. That's why no matter how many times he's slashed into pieces, not a single scratch will appear on his real body. In other words, Anthropos' attack became meaningless. Anthropos burst into laugh because Abel was right. That domain chaos is a realm for souls alone. But the so-called method that he speaks of is nothing but a fantasy. She walks close to Abel and asks him to listen. She stayed in the place. Everything is under her control, so she will kill him as many times as she wants. He perceived as nothing but reality, so she started to pierce her finger on Abel's chest. She also asks how long he can endure the pain on his limb being torn, the agony of his breath stopping. The terror of death slowly approaches because in the end he's still human with fragile willpower. She licks her finger with Abel's blood while thinking if she keeps tormenting him because sooner or later he will beg her to kill him. But it looks like Abel didn't want to give up. When he became alive again, he challenged Anthropos to give it a try. Another post finds him a foolish one and slashes every piece of him again and again. She didn't stop until Abel went into the desert. He was wondering how Anthropos would kill him this time. Then Anthropos followed him into the desert. She was furious because despite killing him over and over, he remains calm. She accuses him of being a subordinate of another false god. Abel denied it since he still could feel the pain in a human after all. Abel fell into deep thought and realized that he always longed to touch magic, yearned for it, but he couldn't. Then a door opened. He was now able to experience a luxurious time that ordinary people can never taste. Anthropos widened her eyes. Thinking he was losing his mind, Abel agreed maybe he was, but it's just his own perspective from outside. He might look completely crazy, but he did not bother what other people thought about him. Anthropos suddenly laughed because she now understands he's a hopeless fool. It looks like she was done playing the game because Abel was stunned when in an instant they were in the real world where he could see Dulce and other teams' lifeless bodies on the ground. Anthropos furrowed her brow because in that world, she was going to kill him. When Anthropos announced that she was going to kill Abel, the latter looks not worried. To be killed in that world and just die like anyone else is not the issue, because everything fell exactly as he planned. He looked at Dulce's group. They were being sliced to bits in the spirit realm, but in reality there's no single scratch on them. Anyway, Anthropos summoned Demon Spirit and start to attack Abel with its lightning. It's a big help that he has already seen the demon and its attack before. As expected, even if it's a false god, in their world they can't use chaotic powers like in the spirit realm. Not having a physical body is a huge disadvantage. Even if the entity is a false god physically, It's just an ordinary human since she was just using Mireya's body as her vessel, meaning he was just like fighting any other regular magician. He took out a magic stone and created an airflow manipulation. As a result, the false god was having a hard time breathing. Abel forms an evil smile when he sees that his magic has been working. His airflow manipulation. It is a unique magic that uses science. If he could knock her out, victory is his. But to his surprise, his eyes widened when the false god suddenly ran towards him and confirmed that he was using science. He knew that his airflow manipulation was broken, and it can't be used at close range. He has to leave enough oxygen around him so he doesn't suffocate. In other words, if one was near him, that one was safe. He plans to finish the false god with one shot, but it turns out bad, because the false god already releases numerous demon spirits. Abel felt confused and didn't know what to do if he was going to use his ice wall or not, because if those demon spirits all fire at once, he won't be able to block it. The moment that he passed out, everything was over. He uses explosion towards the demon spirit, and as a result, Abel is thrown out. As he expected, a blast from that close range is hard to endure. However, compared to the pain experienced in the spirit domain, it was nothing. He looked at his surroundings and realized that all of the students were gone. Then he saw Anthropos standing on the other side, injured. She was furious at him since he was a real pain to deal with. Abel. Bull teases her if she was complimenting him. That's why the false god burst into anger. He stared at the false god and now noticed that she's barely standing. She doesn't have the energy to heal her own wounds. He was having a second thought if he was going to attack her or not. He was taken aback when he saw that Anthropos saw Victor lying on the ground. The false god forms an evil smile and sits beside Victor because she was planning to devour his soul first and deal with Abel after. The latter dropped his jaw when he saw that the false god was converting Victor's soul into magic power and seems trying to incarnate it. He was worried, so he immediately used his ice spear to stop her. But it looks like the false god had a barrier to block his spear and continued her doings. If he can't stop her, he won't make everything in time. Abel widens his eyes when finally Mireya calls his name and announces that she was holding the false god off, and it's his chance to kill her. Abel furrowed his brow when the false god released a demon spirit again and struck him with its lightning. Fortunately, he avoided the strike. He clenched his fist and smiled at Mireya for doing the right thing. The false god was enraged because she's been waiting for that moment for so long, so she ordered Mireya not to do foolish things. She also reminds Mireya that if Abel killed her, she too was going to be killed, but Mireya already knew that. She even encouraged Abel to hurry and kill her. Abel apologizes to Mireya, but the latter understands everything. She reasoned that if her death means they can destroy the false god, then her death was worth it. She spread her arms ready to be killed. Her eyes widen when Abel releases a magic circle and starts to convert her soul into magic power. It's the reason why Abel went to the president and made a contract with her, to gather the complete set of her research documents on converting the soul into magic power. He was delighted when he already held the document. The president was curious about why he wanted the document badly, but decided not to ask. She even reminds Abel that the magic output is too low, so basically it's unusable. Abel understands her, so he immediately went to his room and analyzed everything. As he expected, the president's conversion of the soul into magic is perfect. There's one flaw in the documents. Her magic follows the principle in the primordial series souls were created alongside the body by the creator of God. The real answer was in Mireya's data that the source of magical power was not created by God, but by the false god. Of course, the president didn't know that's why her converting soul into magic power was incomplete. Only a small amount of magical power was obtained. Abel knew that it's not just about science. There are still many hidden truths in their world, and the false gods are the key to uncovering them. He never intended to kill Anthropos or Mireya from the start because Anthropos was an irreplaceable piece of the puzzle. His goal of breaking the curse that false god So places on his sister never fades. Since he has zero magic power, he had no choice but to gain some. First, he needs to complete converting the souls into magic power. Because the magic stones alone couldn't provide the amount he needed, he has to use their souls and start the subjugation. His eyes widen when a dark power starts to swirl around Mireya's body. He didn't know if he succeeded, but he was worried when Mireya's body fell on the ground. Abel drops his jaw when he sees Anthropos naked in front of him and separate from Mireya's body. The false god was about to say something, but to her stunned, she had a high-pitched voice. She realizes that she's been reduced to a childish form. Abel was confused because Anthropos doesn't know herself. All she could remember is that Abel activated the reincarnation earlier and must have materialized in an unintended form. On the other hand, Mireya woke up and was shocked to realize that she was still alive. She was confused because she thought she'd committed a double suicide with Anthropos. Abel was delighted when he saw her. Everything went well. The mystery is starting to unravel when the crucial part was succeeding at converting the soul into magic power before subjugating. He explains his theory to Mireia, but it looks like the latter couldn't understand since he's a genius, and only he can understand his own words. He turned to Mireia and apologized for not granting her wish to kill her. Mireia was taken aback when she realized that her body feels light. The presence of Anthropos inside her is gone. She also added that if the child in front of her was really Anthropos, then she's free. She was still processing the event when her eyes widened, because the young Anthropos suddenly rushed towards Abel and pulled his hair, begging him to use her chaotic domain. They started to argue, and the young Anthropos was irritated by his touch and hug, so she struck him. As a result, blood was flowing on Abel's head, but he didn't stop. That's why Mireia immediately gave him a hard elbow on his head. When she saw Abel was crying on the ground, she apologizes because she can't forgive such a perverted act. Anthropos instantly hides on her back, trying to avoid Abel, claiming that she had no one rather than Mireia, so she asked her to protect her from Abel. Mireia was speechless. Then she suddenly grabbed her hair when she remembered how cruel the false god is towards her. As a result, young Anthropos burst into tears and accused her of being bullied. Abel couldn't handle them anymore, so he asked Mireia to hand the false god into him. The latter asks him to calm down, but Abel doesn't listen. His eyes look like a psycho, so she grabs Anthropos and immediately runs away from him. Subsequently, news about the battle spread on the Plum Academy. Students were talking about those unconscious students who've been knocked out for 3 days. But no one remembers what happened. They mocked Abel's team for being the lowest ranked and having 0 power. All of it heard for a cell, but she didn't interfere and continued to walk away. The team battles ended in chaos. Those killed in the chaotic domain didn't remember what happened inside, nor the existence of the domain. The feared exposure of Mireia and the false god's relationship never happens. Abel and Mireia also pretended not to remember anything. In addition, Mireia and Abel were both disqualified. Apparently, they went out of bounds while chasing after Anthropos. Yet they still got second place. The team scanned the board. They were bewildered because the first place went to the team that defeated Victor, and the 3 teams including them didn't earn a single point. So why did they get the second place? Victor shouted to Sienna when he sensed that she was leaning on him and tried to fall asleep. Mireia calmed him down because their second place was all thanks to Sienna. She wasn't drawn into the false god's chaotic domain and not discovered and defeated by anyone, so she received a survival judgment when the matches ended. Surviving alone doesn't earn points, but since the 3 teams other than the first place winner tied, the rule states that in case of a tie, the team with more survivors ranks higher was applied. Victor carried Sienna on his back and was about to leave, when Mireia asked him if he felt better. In response, Victor smiled because he slept like a log since he was one of those people who was unconscious for 3 days. Abel was relieved now that the crisis of expulsion has passed, but there is a class tournament upcoming and only class representatives will participate, the one he had to win. Anyway, Mireia remembers Anthropos who are under the care of Abel. She asks him not to be rough with her. Abel smirked because even though she put her through so much, she was still too kind. She also thanked Abel for performing the subjugation, even though he could have died too. Abel was stunned because he didn't do it to save Mireia specifically. Thought that his goal was to break his sister's curse. That's why he was desperate for information on false gods. He even thought of becoming their servant, but fortunately he has a chance to control a false god. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He had no choice but to risk his own life for his sister, so he told Mireia not to worry about it. Upon hearing his words, Mireia shouted at her that she does mind, but she can't continue her words and seems restraining something. Abel was confused by her behavior. He was left speechless when Mireia suddenly turned around and ran away. Mireia was catching her breath when she stopped. She immediately covers her mouth while her heart thumping. On the other hand, Abel went to the student council to personally thank Judith, which means he was going to participate in the upcoming tournament as the D-class representative and win. If he fails to achieve it, they will literally hold the power of life and death over him. That is the price for obtaining the conversion of the soul into power magic and subjugation. Judith was happy to hear, but Abel seemed not. So Judith pricked his cheek when she noticed that there's something wrong. He admitted to the president that he was curious as to why she wanted to make him fight so badly, because as the price for the 2 magic, it was not nearly balanced since it was valuable. Judith simply explained that she was interested in his magic. That's why she wanted him to see him fight without holding back and uncover his true nature. Abel was confused if it would have been better to demand his research materials as the price. To his surprise, Judith told him that if she did that, he might refuse the deal. Abel stared at the president. His science magic denies the primordial series. If he revealed it in detail, there's a high risk he'd be branded as a heretic. He wants to talk about it with the president. but he changes his mind because there's no reason to deliberately walk such a dangerous bridge. She offered conditions that were easy for him to accept. He thought that there's something he didn't realize earlier, but he had no choice but to accept her offer back then. To his confusion, Judith asked him out of the blue if she was a very mean person for asking to win against an A-class student who might be Frossel. Abel smiled and replied that he still had time and could manage somehow. He thought about the certain circumstances. He had acquired a secret weapon too. The president might have thought so too, which is why she set those conditions. Judith claims that she has high hopes for Abel. She thought she had no ulterior motives but can't help but wonder countless times the magic that he's been using. An ice spear that isn't an ice spear. An unusual magic that she knows nothing about. So she wanted to see it with her own eyes. She wanted to solve the mystery. She was about to say something, but she didn't notice that Abel was already gone. Then, her thoughts are being interrupted by the knock on the door. She was confused when she opened the door and saw that it was Oleg, the headmaster of their academy. He generally doesn't interact with students outside of public occasions. He even never interfered with the student council before, and that is the first time he came to the student council room. Oleg made it clear to her that he came for a little business, but happened to see Abel leaving in her room. So he asked if she was that close with him. So Judith explains that she is just asking him to join the student council. The headmaster understood, but advised her not to be acquainted with him because he wants her cooperation for an investigation. The next day, Maria went to Abel's dorm. She was hesitant at first, but managed to gather strength to knock on his door. Inside the room, Abel grabs a knife. He seems frustrated over Anthropos who are being prone in the ground. She kept on threatening to kill him 13 times. The false god who he finally managed to enslave was extremely rebellious. Whenever she gets the chance, she tries to kill him. In her perspective, the only way to be freed from him as his master is either he will be released to the band or he will die. So her motive is perfectly reasonable, but the problem is she can't disobey Abel's order. In her state, there's no way it's ever going to work. He expected Anthropos to be more obedient, but she was not. Abel let out a sigh and asked her to stop with her pointless struggle because in her current state she can't kill him. So he offered his hand and told her to help him instead. Anthropos burst into cry for being a false god. She was humiliated for forcing her to crawl like that by just a mere human. Abel was worried and explained that he was just restraining her like that because she kept trying to kill him. He demands her to make a promise not to do it again. Finally, Abel let out a sigh when the false god agreed with him, so he commanded her that she can move. But to his surprise, Anthropos suddenly grabbed the knife and pointed it against him. Abel had no choice but to command her again to crawl again on the ground. He was bewildered if Anthropos's brain powers dropped to toddler level. Then Mireia suddenly entered the room and saw everything. She explained that she brought some clothes for Anthropos and kept on knocking, but no response. When Anthropos saw her, she burst into tears asking for help. She even accused Abel for restraining her so she can't move, the latter reason that she kept on killing him. Mireia, who has a kind heart, asks Abel to release her. But as soon as Anthropos was being released, she immediately grabbed the knife and pointed it to Mireia's neck. She laughs at them for falling into her trap. She also added, if Abel values Mireia's life, he has to release her enslavement. Abel let out a sigh. He lost his patience towards the false god and used his force. Later on, Mireia apologizes to Abel since she started to doubt him. In response, Abel told her that it's fine as long as she can now understand his situation. He also explains that Anthropos's current condition looks like she lost almost all her power as a false god. She doesn't even seem capable of using basic magic, because if she does, she could kill him with it. He gave order to Anthropos, who's silently sitting on the ground, to give up. The false god burst into anger, yelling at him to shut his mouth since she would never listen to a human. So, Abel immediately leaned forward at her and explained that no matter what, she was in the position where she would serve him. No matter how much she hates him, she can't go against his orders. He threatened her to be kept paralyzed like that and give her the taste of unbearable pain. In that way, maybe he should return for what she did to him back in the spirit realm. Anthropos seemed frightened at his words and analyzed everything. Afterwards, she made a promise that she will behave. But Abel didn't believe her since she already said it before. Anthropos panicked, so she made a promise this time that she was telling the absolute truth. Abel agreed, but didn't let her move. Instead, to prove her promise, he asks everything that she knew about the false god, So. Unfortunately, Anthropos didn't know anything about So, since she barely interacts with other false gods. Abel clenched his fist because Anthropos is a useless piece of junk god. He remembers what Anthropos said when she was still on Maria's body, that she knows more than he does. He guesses not everything's going to work out that way he wants, so he asks Anthropos about their world. The false god formed an evil smile since he was asking something huge. It's too broad. and she can't give him answers. He has to narrow it, so Abel specifically asked her why the false gods kill people. In response, Anthropos told them that the arrival of false gods known as Calamity sometimes appear on the surface with heretics and go on a rampage, killing humans indiscriminately. Abel was furious when he heard that they are saving souls because they call that massacre a salvation. Anthropos form an evil smile and insist that it's salvation. She also added that souls by nature are meant to be free, but because they are bound by the shackle called a body, humans like Abel are forced to suffer every single day. That's why she'll break that shackle and set him free. Abel was confused, so he asked Anthropos to explain it the way he can understand. So Anthropos stated that they serve a being known as the Supreme God. Abel interrupts and makes it clear that the being she said is the God who created that world. But he was wrong, because the Supreme God and the God who created their world are completely different beings. The Creator was made by the Supreme God. Anthropos also added that the Supreme God is the first God ever manifest, the only absolute supreme that can't compare to anyone else. The Supreme God created a perfect world, the ideal realm, and 9 subordinates, and they, the false God, are those subordinates. Abel was shocked upon hearing her because there are supposed to be only 8 gods, but Anthropos tell that they are 9. Anthropos's smile for catching it quickly. She also mentioned that the 9th subordinate that Abel was talking about is the very God that they all refer to as the God of their world, the Creator who made that material world. She also added them the so-called Creator drowned in greed and ended up creating a world of their own. The world it made is hopelessly flawed, hideous, and utterly repulsive to look at. Abel was confused, so he made it clear from the false god's perspective that their world is like hell, so they are trying to liberate them. Anthropos agree because their world is overflowing with all kinds of suffering, harsh nature, disasters, famine, and on top of that disease, so staying alive is already a struggle. She also mentioned that humans foolishly fight among themselves. They mock each other over the slightest differences and steal from each other. Humans are quick to resort to violence and killing, even the Plum Academy, that tiny little world of children. The worst is that even when their body dies, the souls gain a new body and reincarnate in their world again. So only them, false gods, can break that cycle. To free a soul, they must intervene personally, so it is called salvation. Abel burst into anger because for him, humans don't want to be killed by the likes of them. But he became disoriented when Anthropos told him that the Creator designed humans to see death as the ultimate suffering, so that they'd never try to escape their world. He can't accept his explanation. Maybe for false gods their world is like hell, but for him most people were not. There's no way he could ever see that their doing is a salvation. He let out a sigh and asked him one more thing. What exactly magic is? Anthropos fell into deep thought because the question is quite abstract. Later on, she told them that magic is a way to distort the laws of the world. Abel didn't complain because he doesn't know what's going on anymore. Mireia, who's listening at his back, exclaimed that magic is supposed to be the law of the world itself, even the primordial series. Abel and Anthropos were surprised, so the latter asked Abel to explain everything to Mireia. Abel thought that he was planning to do so, and maybe that's the best time to explain it to Mireia. So he told Mireia that the primordial series goes against the true law of their world, like how the 4 classical elements don't actually exist. The latter couldn't believe it, so Abel added that she already knew his magic is different from their usual stuff. His is built on the real structure of the world's law, yet still magic, though the foundation is completely different. That's why he can pull off things that shouldn't be possible by the standard mage's understanding. He asks Mireia that she too was drawing a magic circle without any divine inscription. The latter reasoned that it was because she was under the control of the false god back then. So Abel made it clear that all the other mages out there are building their spells using the primordial series, which is based on incorrect laws of the world, and yet their magic still works like it's nothing. So it makes sense to assume that magic itself has the power to distort the law of reality. He turns to Anthropos and asks why the primordial series is treated like some kind of ultimate truth. The false god yawned and lazily answered that maybe the Creator rigged things that way. Abel noticed her action until she felt on the ground and fell asleep. He was putting blankets on the false god when Mireia apologized for dragging him to all of that. Then she asked if he was seriously planning to have the false god live with him permanently. She was worried when Abel agreed, but couldn't voice her thoughts at first. Then she explained that getting involved with the false god basically means he'll be haunted as a heretic. She advises him to show some sense of danger since a lot has been going on. Abel was bewildered because a heretic is someone who worships a false god. But in his case, it's the other way around, and he was the one giving orders. He even stopped a calamity before it happened. Mireia agrees with him, but she insists if someone seriously suspects him, they won't even listen to what he has to say, so it's better to be safe than sorry. He needs to be more cautious while inside the academy. Meanwhile, Judith was taken aback when Alec told her that Abel was a heretic. It's quite troubling, but she considered that possibility too. She thought of the day when the false god attacked their followers and appeared in grotesque forms. They say even those without any magic power can wield strange powers through the false gods. She thinks Abel was one of them since he can use magic despite having zero magic power. But Abel's spells, though mysterious yet followed proper procedures, there wasn't a single sign that pointed heresy. Besides, if he was a heretic, he would never propose a deal that clearly puts him at a disadvantage. But she can't tell that to Alec. Instead, she stated that as a student counts, they can't just turn a blind eye to it because it's a serious matter. She also added that she spoke with Abel several times, but there was nothing suspicious about him. Then he asked the headmaster what prompted his doubts. Alec simply replied that there were reports that caught his attention. Even before that, Abel had sorts of issues. Judith was curious about the report that he mentioned. If that is what happened at the exchange event, then she bears some responsibility. So she immediately explained that tensions between students are kind of normal. Students from lowered-ranked classes do tend to get treated more harshly. Abel was unusual, but to call him a heretic is a bit much. She became worried when the headmaster sensed that she quickly defended Abel, so she made it clear that not all heretics are maniacs. Alec laughs at her because he was not hoping Abel could turn into one. Their situation is serious, and they can't afford to take chances. Even the slightest possibility of Plum Magic Academy becoming the source of calamity, they cannot let that happen. Judith agreed with him. Although she had a feeling that a decision was already made, arguing any further is pointless, and might make things worse. So she told the headmaster that she was willing to cooperate with the investigation. After all, she knew Abel was not a heretic, and the doubt will clear eventually. Yet still, she was confused on why the headmaster was being harsh on Abel. Then her eyes widened when the headmaster introduced her to someone. Because she didn't notice the girl entering the room, she didn't recognize her face and assumed that she was a first-year student. Anyway, the headmaster told her that she can think of the girl as his representative that can report even the slightest detail. He was counting on her, and her cooperation is all he asked. Anya was stunned by Abel's sight. She yelled at him, demanding an explanation why he's with Mireia. It happens because 3 days ago, Abel asked Mireia if she was free, hoping she could help him with something. After enslaving the false god Anthropos, he was truly immersed in new magic research. He got to be prepared for the interclass battle too, regarding the advancing of his science magic, especially the lightning and magnetism. But his science magic defies the foundational magic series, so for ordinary magicians, that's taboo, because the moment he revealed it, he'll be branded as a heretic. But Mireia, a true heretic, won't bat an eye. Unfortunately, the latter got a prior engagement over to a friend's place. He was astonished because she has a friend. When Mireia told him that they were doing a study session on Dark Attribute Demon Summoning Magic, it hit him. Dark Attribute Foundational Series is barely researched, almost no written records on demon magic. So he asked her if she could tag along. Mireia refused because he was not a demon user. Abel insists because technically he does have a familiar. Mireia was speechless since it's true, he got Anthropos as his slave. When the day comes, Mireia was worried when Awunya was irritated after seeing Abel. The latter looks confused since he was not good at memorizing names and faces. When Awunya reminds him of the entrance exam, Abel finally remembers her and even calls her a phoenix. Anya's anger didn't bother Abel. He even introduced himself. To lessen the atmosphere, Mireia calls Aonia's attention and asks if Abel could come with them. She was having a second thought, but in the end she decided that Abel could come with them. She pointed her finger on Abel's chest and demanded that she was counting on him. She turned around and commanded the two to come since she already booked the tickets. Later on, Abel was amazed because they were riding a first-class compartment on the magic train. He asked Mireia since he was curious on how Anya became her friend. Mireia explained that it was Anya who talked to her first. Since they were both demon users, they should get along. Abel understood since both of them summoned demons from the Guetia series, with 72 volumes of grimoires and each linked to a specific demon. Then Mireia asks Abel about Anthropos. Her jaw dropped when Abel suddenly created the spirit realm and released Anthropos. He explained that he added the command to deploy the domain Chaos into an enslavement ritual. It's a perfect place for the false god to stay. The false god was furious when she fell hard on the ground and summoned her out of nowhere. She started to blabber about who she was, that they didn't pay attention to Anya, who suddenly opened the door. The two were nervous that they might be caught, so Abel immediately closed the spirit realm. So in an instant, Anthropos vanished along with her loud scream. Anya already heard the scream before she entered, but couldn't find any other people beside the two. Abel pretends that they didn't hear anything, but Ionia insisted, because she definitely heard it. Abel got an idea. He told her that it was maybe Mireia doing her cat impression. The latter was surprised and asked if she was really it. She had no choice but to do a meow thing when Abel told her to do so. Anya seems half convinced. Later on, the carriage stopped at a huge mansion, where a butler and many maids were waiting for them. The butler immediately greeted Anya along with Mireia and Abel. The two were amazed when they realized that Anya was actually a noble lady. On the other hand, the butler announced that he was going to prepare some tea for them, but Anya refused instead, asking for a key. She turns to Abel and Mireia and leads the way to a huge door. Abel drops his jaw when they enter a huge library that couldn't compare to the Academy's library. He thought that it's the reason demon summoners are so rare, but after records were found showing the great sage Paracelsus used demons, most related grimoires were destroyed during the ban. Ionia said that back in the day, summoning demons was considered taboo. Totally idiotic. She smiled when Abel agreed with her because for him, it all comes down on how one will use it. She boasted that their family safeguarded many forbidden tomes over generations. So when it comes to demon-related grimoires, no place beats their library. Abel seems excited because in their library, those are grimoires he never even heard of. Then, Awunya shows the Maki where Gwytia Volume 32 is located, the demon she wants to contract next. Abel dropped his jaw when he saw that the book was the Asmodeus, one of the 7 deadly sins. The demon of lust. If tamed, it grants immense power, but it's famous for rebelling against summoners. So if the demons don't like you, it might just kill you on the spot. Anya did handle the phoenix like it was nothing, but when it comes to Asmodeus, it's another level. So he asked Anya if she was really taking a gamble with it. The latter smirked since it's the reason why she called them. She was only planning to run a test summon. She heard that he got some pretty insane summoning skills. That's why she agreed to come with them. Abel was hesitant because that ain't exactly risk-free for them. Ionia sensed it, so she rushed towards him to stop his whining, instead help her. She didn't expect it for free, so Abel could ask for anything, whatever he asks. Abel was speechless by her offer. Then he decided to check out the books first, and if he finds a grimoire he likes, he'll trade it for help. Awunya agreed, although she had some that can't let go of, so she let Abel wander around the library while she was setting up the rituals outside. When Abel was alone, he was amazed by everything he saw. He had never seen so many rare grimoires, and not all of them are demon-related. A lot look ancient, though there's probably a lot of junk mixed in too. He wishes he could hole up in there for a week straight. He saw some really old books, then a book with ancient language caught his attention. He took and started to read it. His eyes widened when the first pages stated that it's the thesis on electricity and magnetism. Abel found a book that consists of electricity and magnetism, and information that he was looking for. While reading it, he was being disturbed when Anthropos suddenly popped out. The false god reasoned that it's just the two of them inside the library. Anyway, the principle of science only contains vague descriptions. The research into scientific magic hit the dead end. Due to the nature of the subject, he couldn't run experiments. After a lot of struggle, he managed to construct a lightning strike, but it was nowhere near practical use. He found something interesting in the book, so he asked Anthropos on how much she knew about science. In response, the false god answers that all she knows is just the basics. So, Abel explained to her his understanding in science, where it's a rational and brilliant form of wisdom, but for some reason, none of it has been passed down to the present era. He asked the false god what might be the reason. Anthropos immediately responded that it was hated. The false god who created the world hated science, the reason it was deliberately removed. Abel gritted his teeth in frustration because of her reason. The false god calmly reasons that she doesn't know why, since she has no idea what goes on that creator's mind. Abel took the book thinking if that's true. It does explain why science was erased so thoroughly to an unnatural degree. He went outside of the library and asked the maid about the location of Anya and Mireia. He holds tight the book, because finding it is incredible stroke of luck. He have to get his hand on it no matter what. Soon Abel found the two ladies. He gave the book to Anya, but the latter was confused if it really existed and valuable since it was written in an ancient script. Abel begged her permission to borrow the book, since no one in their family can read ancient script, and it's not a magic tome. It has no value, so she gave it to Abel. The latter was delighted, so their deal was closed. After that, Abel shows his magic circle and his subjugation spell. No one can activate magic just by copying someone else's magic circle. They have to understand the structure and reconstruct it for his own use. The ex-rebo spell. He originally learned it from the president, but he rebuilt it himself. But he can't show her the president's original materials. However, Aonia stared at his magic circle and analyzed everything, until she was good and thought she could pull it off. Abel was stunned because there's no way an average magician could have managed it in such a short time, so he praised Aonia as being seriously talented. The latter smirked and boasted that she was doing her own research as a demon handler. She even shows her procedure for demon handling. It was done on her end, but it could be a big help if Abel double-checked it. Abel knew that there are two methods in summoning a spirit, not just demons. In spiritual descent, the spirit enters the caster's body directly, unlike summoning that requires a vessel, but consumes significantly less magical energy, which is a big advantage. Abel was worried about the risk of being taken over, so he wanted to discuss some countermeasures, but Anya ignored his words. For her, it won't be necessary, because she was confident that she'll get taken over. Abel drops her jaw for how ridiculously reckless Aonia was. After that, since they were all set, she told the two to head back to the academy. Although confused, Abel agreed. He only meant to peek at some demon-handling research, but he got the ancient book in return and was more than worth it. While Anya speaks with the butler, Abel asks Mireia if everything was okay for her, because the worst-case scenario is just the two of them fighting against Asmadi. In response, she was happy to help Anya, but more important for her is getting to witness Asmadi's descent firsthand. It's a once-in-a-lifetime chance for any demon handler like her. She knew the risk, that's why he brought Abel with. Abel was stunned since he was more of an academic and wanted to be a researcher, not some fighter. Mireia became irritated and advised him to work on being oblivious sometime. Then they went to a place inside of the academy, secluded enough to avoid attention and space to move around even if things get wild, big enough to draw Asmodee's descent circle too. Oena starts to create her magic circle. Then they tie a rope on her wrist and leg. She advises the two to get out of the circle and stay back at a safe distance, because she has to close it from the inside. So, the two move away and let Aonia do her stuff. Abel was stunned when out of the blue, Mireia asked him if it was really dangerous because he seemed really concerned. In response, he stated that Aonia might manage somehow, but it's really dangerous. If an unskilled caster tried that, they could literally die instantly. He also added that Aonia wanted to defeat someone named Frotel Gilbert from Class A. Mireia noticed that they had the same last name, so she asked if they were related. Abel remembers that Frozel might kill him if he admits that they were siblings. He didn't answer her questions. Instead, he asked if Frozel was really that strong. Mireia doesn't know her details and stated that Frozel is probably insanely strong because she was not ranked 1 in her class if she's not. She was surprised when Abel suddenly wiped the tears on his eyes because he knew he raised a fine sister. Their conversation was interrupted when Aonia started to summon Asmodee. Massive energy suddenly erupted inside Aonia's magic circle. Mireia was worried, so she called her name hoping she was okay. Then, the energy vanished and revealed Anya. Abel was amazed because he thought the possession was a success, but the two were shocked when Aonia broke the tie on her hands. But as she speaks, she was not Aonia anymore. She was being possessed by the demon. They assumed that she was completely possessed. That's why they have to awaken Aonia's consciousness. The demon turns to them and asks if they were Aonia's subordinates. Abel notices the tail on Aonia's back and realizes that he was one of the 7 deadly sins, Asmodeus. He thought that maybe they could negotiate with him, so he told the demon that they were not Anya's subordinates. He also added that they were not prepared not to fight if possible. The demon asks them if they were underestimating him, because they exist to torment humans. The demon also added if they are thinking of negotiating with him. The demon suddenly became furious and let out his fangs because he didn't like them. Abel noticed it, so he decided to strike first and use his pressure air. Since the demon was using Owenya's body, maybe he could knock him out. As a result, the demon couldn't speak, but they were astonished when a massive power suddenly emerged, and the demon used self-destruction. Then the demon exploded. After the explosion, he noticed that Aonia's body was still intact with no scratches, so he used his Palace of Ice, a multi-layered spellcasting, and struck it towards the demon. But the demon made a counterattack and struck Abel, which is why he was being thrown out on the ground. Before he knew it, the demon was already in front of him, grabbed his chin and lifted him into the air. Abel was worried because she was being lifted with just one hand effortlessly. No spell circle, no chanting from the very beginning. He was clueless on what power the demon possesses. Mireia, who's on the side, was worried. She was calling for Awunya to wake up. Abel knew that Aonia's presence was totally gone. He clenched his fist thinking what to do. He has no other choice but to reset. So he unleashed his spirit realm, the Chaos Domain, and they both fell into that dark place. Mireia saw it all. She was calling for Abel. But in an instant, the two vanished. Chapter ends at 23. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you love this manga. Have a good day.